Someone, help me. 3 words. That's all it took. Alex Carter heard them from around a corner, quiet, rough, barely above a whisper. And something inside his chest stopped moving. 6 men, one bleeding biker on the ground, a metal pipe catching the afternoon light. Every rational thought in Alex's brain screamed walk away. He walked forward instead, walked. And in the next 8 seconds, a 24-year-old mechanic who had never thrown a punch in anger made 6 grown men understand what a terrible mistake they had just made. If this story moves you, hit subscribe right now. Drop the name of your city in the comments so I can see how far this story has traveled, and stay with me until the very end. You will not regret it. The afternoon heat in Phoenix, Arizona, in the middle of July is not something you describe to people. You survive it or you don't. The sun doesn't bake you, it presses on you like a hand flat against your back, reminding you constantly that you are small and the desert is enormous. And it was here long before you arrived, and it will be here long after you leave. Alex Carter walked through that heat like a man who had made peace with discomfort a long time ago. He was 24 years old, blonde hair cut short and practical, blue eyes that most people mistook for soft until they looked a little longer and realized there was something quiet and watchful behind them. The eyes of someone who had learned to read a room before speaking in it. He was built lean, not large, the kind of body that came from actual work rather than a gym, shoulders that knew how to carry things, hands that knew how to fix them. He was not a fighter. That point cannot be stressed enough, because what happened that afternoon will make some people assume he was. He was not. He had never trained in any martial art. He had never boxed, never wrestled, never competed in anything more physically aggressive than a high school arm wrestling contest. He lost by a wide margin. He avoided confrontation the way a sensible man avoids a gas leak, not out of fear, but out of the simple, practical understanding that some situations have no good outcome, and the smartest move is to not be in them. I was cutting through the back lot behind the old Riverside Auto Warehouse on Camelback Road because it saved him 7 minutes on his walk home. 7 minutes mattered to Alex Carter in those days. He had a pot of soup on low heat for his father's dinner, a motorcycle carburetor he needed to finish by morning, and approximately $11 in his checking account until the following Thursday. 7 minutes was not nothing. He heard the motorcycle engine, first that low, powerful rumble that Alex recognized the way a piano player recognizes a chord instantly and without thought. Then he heard the shouting. Then he heard something that made the shouting seem very far away, a motorcycle falling. That sound, metal in weight and expense hitting pavement, had a particular quality that any mechanic felt in their teeth. Alex turned the corner without deciding to. His feet moved before his brain authorized the movement. What he saw arranged itself in his mind in pieces the way a scene does when it is too large and too wrong to absorb all at once. A man on the ground, black leather vest, gray beard, one hand pressed against his side ribs, clearly damaged. A pool of dark grease and something else, blood, a thin line of it running from a cut above his eyebrow down the side of his weathered face. 6 men standing around him. Not in a circle exactly, more like a loose arrangement of predators who had learned they didn't need to rush. They had the numbers. They had the space. The nearest building was 300 yards away, and the lot was screened from the road by a collapsed chain link fence and 12 feet of overgrown juniper. Nobody was watching. Nobody was coming. The one holding the metal pipe was the leader. Alex knew this not because of anything the man said or did in that moment, but because of the way the others kept glancing at him. Small, quick looks, the behavioral equivalent of checking a compass. He was broad-shouldered, maybe 35, wearing a sleeveless shirt that showed arms covered in tattoos that looked less like art and more like records of bad decisions. His name, Alex would later learn, was Derek Vaughn. That name would mean something to people in certain circles around Phoenix. It did not mean anything to Alex then. It did not need to. What Alex saw was simple. What Alex understood was simple. 6 against 1. One of the 6 had a weapon. The one on the ground was older, bleeding, and trying very hard to hold his composure against what had to be significant pain. "Give us the keys," Derek said, voice carrying that particular flat quality of someone who has made this kind of demand before someone for whom cruelty had become routine. "And maybe you walk away." The man on the ground, William, so Alex didn't know that yet, looked up at Derek with an expression that was not fear. It was something older and more tired than fear. It was the expression of a man who had faced frightening things in his life and had stopped being frightened of them and found it insulting that the world kept sending them anyway. I walked away from worse than you, William said. His voice was rough, each word costing him something against the pain in his ribs. When you were still in grade school. Derek smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. Old man, he said, that was then. Ortiosh of the other five younger nervous. The one who would break first in any real situation laughed. It was the laugh of someone who needed to prove to the others that he wasn't scared. It echoed off the warehouse wall and sounded hollow and thin. William closed his eyes for one moment. When he opened them, he looked around the lot. Not for escape. He was past that three cracked ribs, don't let you run. He looked the way a man looks when he is making an accounting of his situation and arriving at a number he doesn't like. He looked at the fence, the road beyond it, the empty lot stretching in every direction. And then he said it, not loudly, not desperately, almost quietly. Someone, help me. Alex heard it from 40 feet away. He stopped walking. He will tell you later that there was a moment, maybe 2 seconds long, maybe 3, where he genuinely considered turning around. He wants you to know that because he believes it's important to be honest about it. He was not a superhero. He was not fearless. He was a 24-year-old man with $11 in his checking account and a pot of soup going for his sick father, and he looked at 6 men in a metal pipe, and every functioning part of his brain said, this is not your problem. 2 seconds, maybe 3, and then he thought about his father. Richard Carter had a lot of sayings. He was that kind of man, a construction worker, who had spent decades doing hard physical work and had developed along the way the habit of compressing what he understood about life into short, blunt sentences. Some of them were silly. Some of them Alex had long since dismissed. But one of them stayed with him, had been staying with him for years, like a stone in a pocket, something he touched without thinking. A good man is not measured by what he does when people are watching. He is measured by what he does when nobody will know. Nobody was watching. Nobody would know. And William Harrison was looking up at an empty lot and asking a question that Alex Carter was the only person on earth in a position to answer. Alex stepped around the fence post. He walked forward. Derek turned first. The others followed one by one until all 6 of them were looking at the young man walking toward them across the cracked asphalt, with his hands loose at his sides and his face carrying that particular expression. The quiet, settled one that people who have nothing to prove sometimes wear. Derek stared at him for a long moment. Then he laughed. You serious right now? Alex kept walking. Walk away, kid. Derek tilted his head. I'm being generous. Walk away and this doesn't involve you. Alex stopped. He was maybe 15 feet from the nearest of the 6 men. He looked at William on the ground. He looked at the blood on William's face. He looked at the way William's hand was pressed against his ribs and the small, involuntary wincing that came every time he tried to breathe deeply. Then Alex looked back at Derek. 6 against 1, Alex said. His voice was conversational. Not angry, not nervous, conversational, like he was pointing out an error in a math equation. That's not courage, he said. That's just cowardice wearing a number. The silence that followed that sentence was the kind that has weight. Derek's smile faded, not into anger, not yet, into something more calculating. He turned his head slightly and looked at his 5 associates, and in that look was a question. Is this kid genuinely serious right now? The youngest of the group, the nervous one, stepped forward first. You got a death wish, man. Alex didn't answer him. He had already made the decision that mattered. All the other decisions were just details. Can you stand? Alex said to William on the ground. William looked up at him. There was something new in his expression now. Not quite hope. William Harrison was too old and had lived through too much to feel hope in a situation like this. But something adjacent to it, something like recognition, like he was looking at something he had not seen in a very long time. My ribs are cracked, William said quietly. 3 of them probably. I can't. Stay down then, Alex said. Stay down and keep your head protected. Kid Bar, William said. There are 6 of them, Mom. I can count, Alex said. And then Derek stepped forward and ended the conversation. The first swing of the metal pipe was aimed at Alex's shoulder. It was a solid, experienced swing. Derek had done this before, knew how to put his whole body behind a lateral strike, knew that landing it would stagger a man badly enough to take him out of the fight before it properly started. It didn't land. Alex moved. Not dramatically. Not the way fights look in the movies where a protagonist rolls and spins and makes every evasion look choreographed and intentional. Alex moved the way a man moves who has spent years working around heavy equipment that swings and shifts and drops without warning, quick, short, economical. He stepped inside the arc of the swing, too close for Derek to get the leverage he needed, and the pipe missed his shoulder by 4 inches and hit nothing but hot air. What happened next took Derek completely by surprise. Not because Alex hit him, because Alex didn't hit him right away. Instead, Alex grabbed Derek's pipe arm at the wrist with both hands pivoted on his left foot and used Derek's own forward momentum to redirect him hard into the side of a rusted metal barrel that had been sitting against the warehouse wall for what looked like several years. Derek hit the barrel with his hip and went down sideways, more stunned than injured, and Alex was already moving toward the next man. The second attacker, bigger, slower. A heavy-set man with a shaved head, who Alex would later learn went by the name Brick. A nickname that said more about his density than his toughness, came in with both fists raised like a man who expected to be in a fistfight. He was not in a fistfight, he was in a situation managed by Alex Carter, which was a different thing entirely. Alex ducked under the first punch. He felt the wind of it across the top of his head and used the moment of Brick's extension, that half second when a large man who has thrown his weight forward is most off balance, to put his shoulder into Brick's midsection and push. Not punch. Push. The way you push a motorcycle that won't start low and hard and with all your legs behind it. Brick went backward and sat down heavily on the asphalt and did not get up immediately. 2 down in 12 seconds, the remaining 4 exchanged looks. Here is what they expected: a brawl. A young man swinging wildly, getting tired quickly, making emotional decisions that they could exploit. They had seen it before. Most confrontations, especially ones that started from a place of righteous anger, burned hot and bright and short. The person defending someone else almost always overextended themselves emotionally in the first 20 seconds. You just had to absorb it and then take them apart. Alex Carter was not doing that. He was working. That's the only word for it. He moved through the space around him, the way he moved through a cluttered workshop, deliberately reading the environment, using what was available. He was not trying to be impressive. He was trying to be effective. There is an enormous difference between those two things. The third man came at him from the left. Alex caught a length of rusted chain that had been coiled around one of the barrel posts, reached for it without looking, the way a mechanic reaches for a wrench from muscle memory, and swung it in a short, sharp arc that caught the third man across the forearm, hard enough to make him cry out and pull back. Not to incapacitate, to create distance, to buy time. The fourth and fifth came together, which was smart. Coordinated aggression is harder to manage than individual attacks. Alex knew this. He backed up 3 steps, deliberately keeping a broken wooden pallet between himself and them, forcing them to come around it, buying himself a quarter second of separation that he used to grab the pallet and swing it sideways. It was not an elegant weapon. It worked. The pallet caught both men across their arms and chests and stopped their forward momentum completely, and in the half second of confusion that followed, Alex was past them, had repositioned himself between the group and William on the ground, and was breathing hard, but controlled, managing it, keeping it. Derek had gotten back to his feet. He was angry now, not the performing anger of someone trying to intimidate, but genuine personal anger. The kind that comes from being embarrassed. "There are 6 of us," he said. "There were," Alex answered. Derek looked around. Brick was still sitting on the ground. The third man was holding his arm and doing a slow calculation about how much he wanted to be here. The fourth and fifth were upright but uncertain. The sixth, the youngest one, was still where he had been the entire time, slightly behind the others, body angled toward the gap in the fence, doing the arithmetic on how quickly he could be somewhere else. "This isn't over," Derek said. "Come back then," Alex said quietly. Derek stared at him. There is a moment in a confrontation like this, a very specific moment when the person who initiated it performs a private calculation. They weigh what they came for against what they will have to pay to get it. They weigh their desire against their limits. They weigh the story they will have to tell about this afterward against the story they expected to be telling. Derek Vollmar looked at the young mechanic standing between him and his 5 disorganized associates. It's not breathing, hard enough, holding that quiet expression, not triumphant, not aggressive, just present, and he did the math. He turned away. "Let's go," he said to the others. Flat voice. The same flat voice he used at the beginning, except now it was doing different work. Now it was preserving what was left. They left, one by one. The youngest one went first, nearly running, Bricklass hauling himself to his feet with the slow dignity of a man trying to pretend he had simply chosen to sit down. Then the lot was quiet. Alex stood there for a moment alone in the middle of the cracked asphalt, and he became aware all at once of several things simultaneously. His shoulder was throbbing somewhere in the sequence of events. He had taken a hit he hadn't fully registered, and now it was registering with interest. His hands were shaking. Not visibly, but internally, that deep molecular vibration that comes after the body has flooded itself with adrenaline and is now trying to drain it. His knees felt loose and unreliable, the mechanical equivalent of a bolt that's been over-tightened and stripped. He turned around. William Harrison was looking up at him from the ground. Neither of them spoke for a moment. Alex walked over slowly and crouched down. He looked at the cut above William's eye. He looked at the way William was holding his ribs. He looked at the dried blood and the torn leather and the gray beard and the face of a man who had been through more than Alex could probably imagine. "Can I help you up?" Alex asked. "In a minute," William said. His voice was different now. Quieter. Not weaker, deeper, actually. Like something had shifted in his chest that wasn't about the cracked ribs. "You hurt bad?" Alex asked. "I've been hurt worse." Alex nodded. He sat down on the asphalt beside him, not politely, not carefully, just sat down. The way you sit down when your legs decide they are done standing and you accept that. They sat there for a moment in the afternoon heat. Then William said, "Why?" Alex looked at him. "Why did you do that?" William said. "You didn't know me. You couldn't have known if I was worth saving. I might have been the worst man in Arizona. You didn't know." Alex was quiet for a second. "Didn't matter what you were," he said. 6 against 1 mattered. William looked at him for a long time. "What's your name?" "Alex Carter." "William Harrison." He paused. "People call me Iron Will." Alex nodded like this was ordinary information delivered in an ordinary way. "Your ribs need looking at," Alex said, "and that cut needs cleaning." "I've had worse." "That's not actually a medical answer." William made a sound that was half laugh and half wince. It cost him. He pressed his hand harder against his side. "Help me up," he said, slowly. Alex helped him up, slowly. When William was standing, carefully favoring his left side each breath, a controlled, conscious decision, he looked at his motorcycle on the ground. Something crossed his face. Not grief exactly, something more complicated. The motorcycle was damaged, mirror broken, tank scuffed, one of the custom saddlebags torn. It was still beautiful. Even on the ground in the ruined afternoon, it was one of the most extraordinary machines Alex had ever seen up close, and Alex had been around motorcycles his entire adult life. "That's a custom build," Alex said quietly. 40 years of it," William said. "Every piece." Alex crouched down beside the bike without asking permission and looked at it carefully, the way he looked at everything. Mechanical, attentively, respectfully, like it deserved to be understood rather than simply assessed. "The engine is fine," he said. "Frame looks intact. The damage is cosmetic. She'll ride." William looked at him. "You know bikes." "I'm a mechanic." "Well," Alex paused. "I fix motorcycles mostly. Small shop on Van Buren." William was quiet. "Help me get her upright," he said. Together slowly, they lifted the motorcycle from the ground. Alex bore most of the weight, positioning himself where the leverage was working with the machine, the way you work with something valuable, carefully, not forcing anything. When the motorcycle was standing again, William put one hand on the tank and steadied himself against it. He reached into his vest pocket, pulled out a black bandana, turned to Alex, and without asking, wrapped it around Alex's forearm, where a long scrape Alex hadn't noticed was bleeding steadily. Alex looked down at it, surprised. "You were bleeding," William said simply. Alex hadn't known. "Thank you," he said. William tied it off. His hands were steadier than they had any right to be for a man with cracked ribs who had just spent 15 minutes on the ground. Alex noted this without commenting on it. "You have no idea who you just saved," William said. Alex looked at him. "Does it matter?" William Harrison stood in the afternoon heat with his hand on his motorcycle and his ribs cracked and his face still bleeding, and he looked at this young mechanic with the quiet eyes and the shaking hands and the $11 checking account. Though, of course, he knew none of those details yet, couldn't have known them, and something in William's face changed. Not softened exactly, opened, like a door that had been closed for a very long time, had moved just slightly, just enough to let light come through the edge. "It'll matter," William said quietly, "before this is done." Alex looked at the black bandana on his arm. He didn't know yet what those words meant. He didn't know yet who William Harrison was, what world William Harrison moved through, what a phone call from William Harrison could set in motion. I didn't know that by the next morning a message would begin moving through channels he had never heard of, reaching people he had never met, traveling like current through a wire across 5 states. He didn't know that the following day, while he was standing in his small garage on Van Buren Street, reassembling a carburetor with hands that still remembered the shape of the afternoon, before he would hear something outside that would stop him cold. An engine, then another, then more than he could count. Alex Carter walked home that afternoon the same way he had walked every other afternoon. Head down, hands in pockets, thinking about his father's soup, thinking about the carburetor, thinking about $11 and Thursday. He touched the black bandana on his arm once without thinking. And he didn't know, couldn't have known, had no way of knowing that those 8 seconds in a cracked asphalt lot in Phoenix, Arizona on a summer afternoon had just changed everything. Not just for him, for everyone who knew his name, and for some people who would only learn it tomorrow. Alex Carter did not sleep that night, not because of the pain in his shoulder, though the pain was real. A deep, grinding ache that announced itself every time he shifted position, every time he reached for something, every time he forgot about it for 30 seconds and then remembered. Not because of the adrenaline still draining out of his system in long, slow waves that made his legs restless and his thoughts circular. Not even because of the image that kept returning to him unbidden of Derek Vaughn's face in the moment before he turned away, that flat, recalculating look that Alex had learned in the years since to recognize as the look of a man who was not finished, only postponed. I didn't sleep because he kept thinking about what William Harrison had said. "You have no idea who you just saved." That sentence had a weight to it that Alex couldn't put down. He turned it over in his mind the way he turned a part over in his hands when he couldn't identify it, examining it from different angles, looking for the shape of what it meant. He told himself it didn't matter. He believed this when he said it in the parking lot. He believed it a little less at 2 a.m, lying on his back on a mattress that had seen better decades, staring at a water stain on the ceiling, with the black bandana on the nightstand beside him, and 6 cracked ribs worth of mystery sitting in the back of his mind like an engine sound he couldn't identify. Who was William Harrison? He almost looked it up. He had his phone in his hand at 2:17 a.m., thumb hovering over the search bar. Then he put it back down. He wasn't sure why, exactly. Some combination of exhaustion and a private belief that the answer would either be nothing, in which case the night's events were simply what they appeared to be, a good thing done quietly, or something large, in which case he would find out in due time whether he wanted to or not. He put the phone down. He closed his eyes. I thought about his father. Richard Carter was asleep in the next room. Alex could hear him, the particular rhythm of his breathing that had changed after the heart surgery, slightly slower, slightly more deliberate, as if even in sleep, Richard's body was now being careful with itself. Alex had gotten used to listening for that sound. In the early weeks after Richard came home from the hospital, Alex had slept with the door between their rooms open, waking at every variation in that rhythm, reaching for his phone to call 911 twice before realizing it was nothing. He still kept the door cracked. He listened to his father breathe. He thought I did the right thing today. He thought I hope Derek Vaughn doesn't know where I work. He thought those ribs on that old man. He thought I did the right thing. And eventually, without deciding to, he slept. He was at the shop by 6:45 the next morning. The garage on Van Buren Street was not much to look at. It had been a Texaco station in a previous life and still had the ghost of that identity. In the layout, 3 service bays, a small office with a window that faced the street, a parts room in the back that smelled permanently of oil and rubber, and the particular dusty metal smell of old inventory. Alex's boss, a man named Curtis Reeves, who was 58 and had the arms of a man who had spent 4 decades doing physical labor, and the patience of a man who had spent 4 decades dealing with customers, had owned it for 11 years. He liked Alex because Alex was reliable, fast, and honest, 3 qualities that Curtis had learned to value above almost everything else in an employee. Curtis was already there when Alex arrived. He was drinking coffee from a thermos that said "World's Okayest Fisherman" on the side, reading something on his phone, and he looked up when Alex came through the door. He looked at Alex's arm, at the black bandana. "You get in a fight?" Curtis asked. "Not exactly," Alex said. Curtis looked at him for another moment. "You okay?" "Yeah." "Shoulder." Alex rotated it experimentally and tried not to let his face do anything informative. "It's fine." Curtis made the face of a man who did not believe what he was being told, but had decided to accept it. "Yamaha 650 needs the clutch cable replaced. Owner's coming at noon, and there's a Sportster in Bay 2 that I can't figure out, keeps throwing a code I've never seen." "I'll start with the Sportster," Alex said. He went to Bay 2, he put on his gloves. He picked up his diagnostic reader, connected it to the Sportster's OBD port, and stared at the code that appeared on the screen. He identified it in 40 seconds. He began working. This was the truth about Alex Carter that nobody outside the garage ever saw, and that the people inside it had long since taken for granted. He was extraordinary at his job. Not in the way that people describe someone as extraordinary when they mean very good. Actually extraordinary, the kind of mechanical intuition that came from genuine love of the work, from having spent years studying not just how motorcycles were built, but why they were built that way, from having an almost conversational relationship with engines, the way some people have with music, where the language of it was native rather than learned. He'd been this way since he was 15. His father had owned a 1978 Harley-Davidson shovelhead that ran badly and was always threatening to stop running entirely, and Alex had spent 3 years of weekends taking it apart and putting it back together with library books and YouTube videos, in the kind of relentless, self-directed determination that looks from the outside like obsession and feels from the inside like love. By the time he was 18, the shovelhead ran better than it ever had from the factory. His father had cried. He hadn't said why. He didn't need to. The shop on Van Buren was not Alex's dream. His dream was his own place, custom builds, restoration work, the kind of shop where a motorcycle wasn't just repaired, but understood. He had notebooks full of designs. He had calculations for the startup cost updated and revised again, as the numbers kept changing, kept being insufficient, kept running into the reality of Richard's medical bills and the reality of $11 in a checking account. And the reality that dreams, however precise and detailed, require capital that a 24-year-old mechanic with a sick father and 2 jobs did not reliably have. But this was the thing about Alex that people who knew him understood, and people who didn't know him missed entirely. He was not bitter about it. He did not carry resentment for the gap between where he was and where he wanted to be. He worked. He saved what he could. He took care of his father. He fixed motorcycles with the same attention and care, whether they were expensive custom builds or beat-up commuter bikes owned by people who could barely afford the repair. Curtis had asked him once, not unkindly, why he worked so hard on machines that weren't worth the labor. "Machines tell you the truth," Alex said. "They don't care who owns them. A bad repair is a bad repair, whether the bike costs $500 or $50,000. Curtis had thought about that for a while. Then he said, "You know, most people don't think like that." "Most people," Alex said without any particular edge, "miss a lot because of it." I was 3 hours into the Sportster when Curtis appeared at the bay door. "Someone's here for you," Curtis said. Alex looked up. Curtis was looking at him with an expression that Alex had not seen on Curtis's face before. Not quite wary, not quite impressed, somewhere between the two. A look that said, "I am not entirely sure what is happening, but I believe it is significant." "Who is it?" Alex asked. "Guy on a motorcycle," Curtis said. "Big one, nice one, says his name is Harrison." Alex set down his wrench. He walked out to the front of the shop. William Harrison was standing beside his motorcycle at the edge of the lot. He had cleaned up since the day before the cut above his eyebrow had been closed with 2 butterfly bandages, and he had changed clothes, though the black leather vest with its patches was back in place. He was standing straight, or as straight as cracked ribs would allow, which was straight enough. One hand rested on the motorcycle's tank. The other held a paper bag. He looked at Alex for a moment when Alex came out. "You eat breakfast?" William asked. Alex looked at the bag. "Is this a social visit?" "It's a practical one," William said. "I have something to say to you. It takes longer than a parking lot." They sat on the curb outside the shop with the paper bag between them. William had brought biscuits from a place called Maze on 7th, which were the best biscuits in Phoenix by a margin that was not close, and 2 coffees in paper cups. Alex ate because he had skipped breakfast, as he often did when the morning started early and busy. and he drank the coffee and waited. William ate slowly, each movement deliberate, each breath managed against the ribs. "I'm going to tell you something," William said, "that I want you to hear completely before you react to any part of it." Alex looked at him. "Okay." "My name is William Harrison," William said. "People who know me call me Iron Will. I've been a member of the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club for 38 years. I am not a chapter president. I am not a national officer. But I am a man that people in this organization listen to because I have been around long enough and done enough that my word carries weight." He paused. He looked at his coffee cup. "What happened yesterday was not random. Derek Vaughn knew who I was, he knew what he was doing, and he did it anyway, which means either he is very brave or very stupid, and in my experience, Derek Vaughn has never been brave." Alex absorbed this. "He was trying to take something from you. The motorcycle." "The motorcycle," William confirmed, "and a message, to show that a man like me could be taken down in a back lot by 6 men with a pipe if he was alone and old enough." He looked at Alex. "There are people who would pay well for that message to be delivered. People who don't like you. People who are afraid of what I represent." He paused. "Which is a different thing. Fear doesn't always look like respect, but it operates the same way." Alex thought about this. "And me stepping in ruined the message," William said simply, and created a new one. The morning traffic was moving on Van Buren behind them. A truck went by, a car with its radio up. The ordinary sounds of an ordinary Phoenix morning. And on the curb outside a small motorcycle shop, 2 men sat with paper cups of coffee and a conversation that was going somewhere that Alex had not yet mapped. "What new message?" Alex asked. William looked at him steadily. "That someone stood up. That a young man who had nothing to gain and everything to lose looked at 6 men in a pipe and walked forward anyway." He paused. "Do you understand how rare that is?" "I understand that 6 against 1 is wrong," Alex said. "Yes," William said. "You do. A lot of people understand that in the abstract. You understood it in a parking lot at 2 in the afternoon with your hands shaking." Alex looked at his hands. They were not shaking now. They were folded around the coffee cup, steady, the hands of a man accustomed to precision. They were shaking after, he said, not during. "I know," William said. "That's exactly what I'm talking about." There was a silence between them, not uncomfortable, the kind of silence that has content, both men thinking, both men arriving somewhere. Then William said, "I want to know about you, who you are, not what you did yesterday, who you are." Alex looked at him for a moment. People didn't ask him that very often, not in the way William was asking it, directly with genuine attention, like the answer actually mattered. So he told him. He talked about his father, about the shovelhead, the library books, the 3 years of weekends. He talked about the shop, about Curtis, about the Sportster, currently waiting in Bay 2 with a solved problem. He talked carefully and without self-pity about the money, about the distance between where he was and where he wanted to be, about the notebooks full of designs and the calculations that kept not working out. He talked about the dream that was specific and detailed and real, and perpetually just beyond the point where real became possible. William listened to all of it. He did not interrupt. He did not offer solutions in the middle. He listened the way a man listens when he is actually hearing something rather than waiting for his turn to speak. When Alex finished, William was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "How old are you?" 24. "What do you know about custom builds, not theory? Hands-on." Alex thought about it honestly, the way he thought about mechanical problems, not to impress, but to be accurate. He described 3 builds he had worked on at the shop. He described the modifications he had made to his father's shovelhead over 3 years. He described a frame alignment technique he had figured out himself through trial and error, that he had since found referenced in one specialty manual, which had given him a strange private satisfaction. William listened to all of it. Then he said something that Alex was not expecting. "I have a shop," William said, "not a repair shop, a build shop. We design and build custom motorcycles from the frame up. There are 6 men who work there, and every one of them has been building bikes for at least 15 years. He paused. "I have been looking for someone to apprentice with us for 2 years. I have interviewed 11 people. None of them were right." Alex looked at him. He did not say anything. He understood from the shape of the sentence that he was supposed to wait. "I am not offering you this because of yesterday," William said. "I want you to hear that clearly, because I can see that you are a man who will not accept something that feels like charity and I am not interested in charity, and I don't offer it. He looked at Alex directly. I am offering you this because in 38 years of being around motorcycles and the people who build them, I have learned to recognize something in the way a person talks about a machine. The way you described that shovel head, the frame alignment. He paused. You are not a mechanic who dreams of building. You are a builder who has been surviving as a mechanic. That is a different thing. I have been looking for that specific thing for 2 years. Alex looked at his coffee cup. His heart was doing something that he would have described if pressed as trying to escape. What would it involve? He asked. His voice was careful, measured. The voice of a man who wants something badly enough to be afraid of it. Full apprenticeship, William said. Paid. The rate is better than what you're making now. I already know what mechanics in Phoenix make. Don't argue with me about that. You work alongside builders who know things you don't know yet. You learn. You contribute. After 12 months, we evaluate and decide together what comes next. My father, Alex started. Bring him, William said. I'm not asking you to leave your life. I'm asking you to start the one you've been building toward. Alex stared at the pavement in front of him for a long moment. Why are you doing this? He asked. Not suspiciously, genuinely. William took a breath, careful managed. Because 35 years ago, I was sitting in a parking lot in Albuquerque, New Mexico with a broken down bike and no money and a dream that I couldn't see a path to. And a man I had never met stopped and spent 3 hours helping me get that bike running. He paused. I asked him why, and he said almost exactly what you said to me yesterday, that it was wrong to walk past someone who needed help. He looked at Alex. I have been looking for a way to pass that forward for a long time. Yesterday you showed me where it was supposed to go. Alex did not say anything for a while. The traffic moved on Van Buren. Curtis appeared in the shop doorway behind them, looked at the two of them on the curb and silently withdrew. The Sportster waited in Bay 2. The carburetor parts were still laid out on the work table. The morning was already most of the way through itself. I need to think about it, Alex said. Of course, William said. And I need to tell my father. Of course. And I need... Alex stopped. He looked at William. I'm not going to say yes today. I'm not asking you to, William said. He reached into his vest pocket and put a card on the pavement between them. Plain white card, a phone number, a name, nothing else. When you're ready. He stood up slowly, carefully, the ribs making themselves known again, and he picked up his coffee cup and the paper bag, walked to his motorcycle, and looked back once at Alex still sitting on the curb. Carter, he said. Alex looked up. Whatever you decide, thank you. For yesterday. He said it simply without performance. Not as iron will, as William Harrison, a man who was on the ground and might have stayed there. He mounted the motorcycle with the careful precision of someone managing significant pain and making it look like choice. The engine started that magnificent, deep rumble that Alex registered in his chest rather than just his ears. William pulled out of the lot and onto Van Buren and was gone inside of 15 seconds. Alex sat on the curb for another few minutes. He picked up the card. He looked at it. Then he put it in his shirt pocket next to his chest where he could feel it against his ribs with every breath. He went back inside to finish the Sportster. Curtis was waiting by the bay door. Everything okay? Yeah, Alex said. Who was that? Alex thought about how to answer that. Someone I helped out yesterday. Curtis looked at him for a moment. What kind of help? The kind that apparently mattered more than I realized, Alex said. Curtis nodded slowly in the way of a man who has decided that he doesn't have all the information and that this is acceptable. Sportster's waiting, he said. I know. He went back to the Sportster. He picked up his wrench. He worked. And the whole time he worked through the rest of the morning and into the afternoon, he was aware of the card against his ribs. A small rectangle of weight that represented something he did not have the language for yet. Something between a door opening and a door that had always been there, but that he had not previously known to look for. At 4:30, he called his father. How was your day? Richard asked. The voice that Alex had grown up listening to deeper and slower than it used to be since the surgery, but still recognizably his father's voice, still carrying that particular quality of a man who said more in 4 words than most people said in 40. Interesting, Alex said. I need to tell you something tonight. A pause. Good interesting or bad interesting? Alex thought about William Harrison's motorcycle, the black vest and the cracked ribs and the butterfly bandages, And the biscuits from Mays on 7th in the 35 years, and the man in the parking lot in Albuquerque. I don't know yet, he said honestly. I think maybe both. Richard was quiet for a moment. Soup's on, he said. Come home. Alex locked up his tools. He signed out his hours. He said goodnight to Curtis, who was still there reviewing invoices and would be for another hour and a half. Because Curtis was also that kind of man, the kind who stayed until the work was done, even when the work wasn't glamorous. He walked to his car, an 11-year-old Honda Civic with 140,000 miles and a driver's seat that had given up all pretense of lumbar support, and he sat in it for a moment before starting the engine. I took the card out of his shirt pocket. He looked at it again. One phone number. One name. He thought about the notebooks full of designs. He thought about the calculations that kept not working. He thought about the frame alignment technique and the shovel head and 3 years of weekends and library books. He thought about what it meant to be a builder, surviving as a mechanic. He thought about his father's voice saying, come home. He put the card back in his pocket. He started the Civic and drove home through Phoenix at rush hour, through the heat that was still pressing, even at 5 in the afternoon through traffic that moved in the slow, reluctant way of Phoenix traffic that has never fully accepted that this many cars need to exist on this many roads. He was home by 6:15. He sat down across from his father at their small kitchen table, and Richard looked at him with those eyes. The same eyes that Alex had inherited, that particular quality of seeing past what was on the surface, and said nothing for a moment, just looked. Tell me, Richard said. So Alex told him. He told him everything. The parking lot, the 6 men, the metal pipe, William on the ground and the black bandana, and the sentence, you have no idea who you just saved. He told it factually, without drama, in the way he'd told stories his whole life, clearly in sequence, giving his father credit for being able to handle the information without softening. Richard listened without interrupting. His face didn't move much. His hands stayed flat on the table. He was breathing with that careful post-surgery rhythm. When Alex finished, Richard was quiet for a long time. Then he said, you stepped in. Yeah. 6 of them. Yeah. Another silence. Your shoulder. It'll be fine. Richard nodded. He looked at the table. He looked back at Alex. I would have done the same thing, he said simply. Alex knew that. He had known that before he stepped around the fence post. He had known that in the 2 or 3 seconds when his brain was saying, walk away, and something older and deeper was already moving his feet forward. He had known it because of 38 words his father had told him years ago that had been sitting in his pocket like a stone ever since. There's more, Alex said. He told him about William, about the visit to the shop, the offer. Richard listened to this part differently, more attentive, more still, like a man leaning slightly into a wind to hear something important. When Alex finished, Richard said, what did you tell him? That I needed to think about it. Good answer, Richard looked at him. What do you think about it? Alex turned his coffee mug in his hands. I think it's the kind of thing that doesn't come twice, he said. I think I'm scared of it. Richard nodded. That's reasonable. I think Alex stopped. He looked at his father. I don't want to leave you with Alexander. Richard said his name the way he only said it when he needed Alex to hear it fully. I have been watching you delay your life for 2 years because of me. I understand why, and I'm grateful. And I'm telling you right now as your father, if this is real, if this man is what he says he is, and the opportunity is what he says it is, then not taking it would be the only thing you've ever done that would actually disappoint me. Alex looked at him. Richard looked back. The kitchen was quiet. The soup was on the stove. The Phoenix evening was settling outside. He seemed real, Alex said. You're a good judge, Richard said. You always have been. Alex exhaled. He reached into his pocket. He put the card on the table between them. Richard looked at it, then at Alex. One phone number, Alex said. That's all he left. Richard looked at the card for a long moment. Then you'd better call it, he said. Alex picked up the card. He turned it over once. The back was blank. He thought about the man who stopped in a parking lot in Albuquerque, New Mexico 35 years ago for a stranger with a broken-down bike and no money. He thought about 38 years of a debt that William Harrison had been carrying, looking for the right place to put it down. He thought about 8 seconds. He thought about what 8 seconds cost and what they returned. He picked up his phone. He dialed. It rang twice. William answered on the 3rd ring. Harrison, he said, 2 syllables. Flat and direct, Alex said, it's Carter. A pause, one breath. I'll be at the shop at 7, Alex said, tomorrow morning. And William Harrison, a man who had been through things that would take hours to properly catalog, who had spent 38 years in a world where nothing surprised him and very little moved him, said nothing for a moment. Then he said, 7 is good. And that was all. Alex put the phone down on the table. Richard was watching him. Alex looked up. His father smiled a real smile, the kind that started in his eyes before it reached his mouth, the kind Alex had not seen in 2 years of hospitals and surgeries and $11 checking accounts and soup on low heat. Good, Richard said. Yeah, Alex said. I didn't know yet, couldn't know, had no way of knowing that by the time he arrived at William Harrison's shop at 7 the next morning, something else would already be in motion. Something that had started the night before, moving through channels and networks and phone calls spreading outward from a parking lot on Camelback Road, like a current through a wire. Something that William had not told him. Something that would be waiting for him. Not at the shop, on the street outside it. He left the house at 6:40 the next morning. Richard was already awake. He was always awake before Alex now, one of the strange reversals that came with recovery. The body demanding early hours, the way it demanded medication and quiet and careful breathing. Richard was at the kitchen table with his coffee when Alex came through, dressed keys in hand, the card tucked into his shirt pocket again. Out of habit, even though he no longer needed it. Richard looked at him over the rim of his mug. Nervous, he asked. No, Alex said. Richard looked at him. Yes, Alex said. Richard nodded. Good. Men who aren't nervous before something important aren't paying attention. Alex grabbed his jacket from the hook by the door. He paused with his hand on the knob. I don't know how long I'll be, he said. I know, Richard said. I'll be here. Those 3 words, I'll be here, carried everything Richard Carter had learned to say in 4 syllables instead of 40. I'll be fine. Don't worry about me. Go do this. Go be who you're supposed to be. I'll be here when you get back. Alex walked out into the Phoenix morning. The heat was already working by 6:40. Not the full weight of afternoon heat, but the promise of it, a warmth that had intention behind it, that was already telling you what the day was going to cost. Alex drove the Civic through streets that were just beginning to fill past the early shift workers and the delivery trucks, and the people who lived in the margins of the day, the ones who got up before the city was watching. William's shop was on the east side off McDowell Road in an industrial stretch that Alex knew from delivery routes, warehouses, fabrication shops, a couple of auto body places that had been there since the 80s. He had driven past this block dozens of times without ever looking twice at it. He was 3 blocks away when he heard the first engine. He thought it was traffic. 2 blocks out, he heard more. 1 block out, he understood that what he was hearing was not traffic. Traffic was a texture, a general noise that the city made with itself. What he was hearing now had shape and direction, distinct engine voices, deep and deliberate, the kind of sound that organized itself rather than blurring together. He turned the last corner. He stopped the Civic in the middle of the road. He sat there with both hands on the wheel and looked at what was in front of him and did not immediately move. There were motorcycles everywhere, not a few, not a dozen. Dozens upon dozens arranged along both sides of the block in front of William's shop, lined up with a precision that looked almost military. The chrome catching the early morning light and throwing it back in long, bright lines. Riders were still arriving, coming in from different directions, pulling into formation with the practiced ease of people who had done this before, who knew exactly where they were supposed to be. The sound of all of them together was a physical thing, a vibration that Alex felt in his chest cavity and in the base of his spine. He pulled the Civic to the curb. He sat there for another moment. Then he got out of the car. He had taken maybe 6 steps toward the shop when the nearest rider saw him. A large man, not tall but wide, the kind of wide that came from decades of physical living, sitting on a dark blue Harley with a custom tank, wearing the same black leather vest that William wore. He looked at Alex the way people look at someone they have been told to expect. Carter, the man said. Alex looked at him. Yeah. The man nodded once. He didn't smile. He pulled out a radio, actual radio handheld, the kind Alex associated with job sites, and said 2 words into it, "He's here." And then something happened that Alex would spend years trying to describe accurately and always feel he had fallen short. The engines began to quiet. Not all at once, in sequence from the far end of the block, moving forward like a wave running in reverse, each engine cutting off as it reached until the silence moved up the street toward Alex and arrived at him with a weight that was almost louder than the sound it replaced. Dozens of motorcycles. Silent. Dozens of riders. Still, all of them looking at Alex Carter. Alex stood on the sidewalk and felt for the first time in his life the specific and disorienting experience of being the center of a gravity he did not understand. He was not frightened. He was not exactly comfortable. He was the word that kept coming to him later when he tried to reconstruct the moment located. Like something that had been slightly misaligned for a long time had just been put into its correct position. William Harrison came out of the shop door. I was moving better than the day before, still careful, still managing the ribs with each step, but more controlled, the pain organized rather than open. He was wearing a clean vest, the patches visible and precise. He walked toward Alex and stopped a few feet away and looked at him with that expression that Alex had now seen twice and was beginning to recognize that particular quality of attention of a man who saw things clearly and said what he saw. You came, William said. I said 7, Alex said. You did. A pause. What is this? Alex asked. His voice was steady. He was proud of that. This, William said, is what happens when I make a phone call. You called all of them. I called 2 people, William said. The rest is how this works. Alex looked down the block at the rows of motorcycles and riders. He looked back at William. Why? He asked. William looked at him for a moment. When he answered, his voice was quiet enough that it was just between them, not carrying to the riders nearby. Because what you did needs to be witnessed, William said. Not celebrated, witnessed. There's a difference. Celebration is for victories. Witness is for truth. He paused. These men have been in this life for a long time. Some of them have seen courage. Some of them have mistaken other things for courage. I wanted them to see the real thing. Alex looked at the ground for a moment. I just stepped forward, he said. That's all. That's everything, William said. He turned back toward the block. He raised his voice, not shouting, just projecting the voice of a man accustomed to being heard. 3 days ago, William said, this man saw 6 people attacking one person. He didn't know the person. He didn't know the odds. He didn't calculate what was in it for him. He paused. He stepped forward. The silence on the block was absolute. That is the only thing I have ever asked of anyone, William said. It is the only thing I have ever respected, and it is the rarest thing I have found in 40 years. He looked at Alex. And this was the moment that broke something open in Alex Carter's chest that he had not known was closed. The man on the dark blue Harley at the front of the line put both fists against the handlebar and pressed the horn. One long note. Then the rider beside him did the same. Then the next. Then the next. It moved down the block like the silence had moved in sequence, one voice joining the next until the entire street was filled with sound. Again, not engine sound this time, but horns, dozens of horns, a single long collective note that lasted maybe 10 seconds and then cut off as cleanly as it had started by some signal. Alex couldn't identify, leaving silence again. Alex stood on the sidewalk with his jaw set and his eyes doing something he would have preferred they didn't do. He pressed his thumb and forefinger against the bridge of his nose. He breathed. William watched him. He said nothing. He understood from long experience that some moments needed to be felt completely before they were spoken about, and that speaking too quickly was a way of cutting them short. After a moment, Alex lowered his hand. Okay, he said. His voice was rough but steady. William almost smiled. Okay. I'm ready to see the shop, Alex said. And now William did smile. Come on, then. The shop was extraordinary. Alex understood this the moment he walked through the door, not from what he saw, but from what he felt. The quality of a workspace tells you everything about the people who inhabit it. A garage where work is done carelessly feels careless. A garage where work is done with love feels like something else entirely. It has a specific atmosphere, a sense of accumulated intention, of thousands of hours of serious effort, crystallized into the arrangement of tools and the condition of surfaces and the way the light falls on things. William's shop felt like a church that happened to contain motorcycles. There were 6 men inside, and each of them looked up when Alex and William walked in. They looked at Alex the way mechanics look at other mechanics, evaluating, but not unkindly, the professional assessment of people who have a specific and demanding standard and want to know quickly whether someone meets it or not. William introduced them by name and specialty. There was Marcus, 54, who had been building custom frames for 30 years and had hands that looked like they had been carved from something harder than skin. There was Denny, 47, paint and finish work, who was standing at a workbench with a brush in one hand and the expression of a man who had been interrupted mid-sentence. There was Pete, the youngest at 38, who handled the electrical systems and looked at Alex with the frank curiosity of someone who had decided to reserve judgment until he had more information. Two others, Sal and Garrett, were at the far end, working on what appeared to be a frame in progress. And they looked up briefly and then back down, which Alex respected. There was work to be done, and looking up had a cost. The sixth man was different. He was older than William, if anything, mid-70s perhaps, with white hair cut close to his head, and a face that had been exposed to decades of sun and wind, and the particular aging that comes from a life spent mostly outdoors. He was sitting on a stool in the corner, not working on anything, just watching. His name was Thomas. William introduced him last, and when he did, something in his voice changed, not much but enough that Alex noticed. Thomas built the first motorcycle I ever rode, William said, and he's been telling me what I'm doing wrong ever since. Thomas looked at Alex with eyes that were sharp and clear and entirely unhurried. Show me your hands, Thomas said. It was not a request. It was not aggressive. It was simply a direct sentence from a man who was not interested in preamble. Alex held out his hands, palms up, then down. Thomas looked at them for a long moment. He looked at the calluses. He looked at the small scars that accumulated over years of work with metal and tools. He looked at the scrape on Alex's forearm, still visible at the edge of the black bandana, which Alex was still wearing because it had been there for 2 days and he had not consciously decided to remove it. Thomas looked at the bandana, then at Alex. William told me what you did, Thomas said. I want you to know something. I have known William Harrison for 40 years. In 40 years, I have never heard him make a phone call like the one he made yesterday. He paused. That means something. I want you to know that I know that. Alex looked at him. Thank you, he said. Thomas nodded once. He looked back at the bandana. Keep that, he said, and it was entirely unclear whether he was speaking to Alex or to himself. Then William was moving Alex through the shop, showing him the current projects, the tools, the workflow. Alex followed and listened and asked questions, not performance questions, not the kind designed to demonstrate knowledge, but actual questions, the kind that come from genuine curiosity, from wanting to understand rather than impress. He asked Marcus about the frame geometry on the current build. Marcus answered with the brevity of a man who respected a good question enough to give it a real answer, and then asked Alex one back, and within 2 minutes they were in a genuine technical conversation that had nothing to do with the previous 3 days and everything to do with metal and load distribution and the physics of balance. William watched this from across the shop. He didn't intervene. He watched the way a man watches something he has been waiting to see. Pete, the electrician, approached Alex while Marcus was pulling a drawing from the wall to illustrate a point. You do any wiring? He asked with that frank tone of someone getting straight to the thing. Basic, Alex said. Enough to troubleshoot, not custom work. Honest answer, Pete said, as if this was notable, which Alex was beginning to understand in the world of people who oversold themselves. It was, I'd rather say I don't know something and learn it right, Alex said, than say I do and do it wrong. Pete looked at him for a moment. Then he said, I can work with that. They broke for coffee at 9. William and Alex stood slightly apart from the others, not deliberately, just naturally. There were things between them that the others understood were not yet finished. What do you think? William asked. I think, Alex said slowly, that these men are the best I've ever been in a room with. I think I'm the least experienced person here by 15 years minimum. And I think, he paused, he chose his words carefully, the way he chose a tool precisely for the specific job. I think that if you give me 12 months in this shop, I will not be the least experienced person anymore. Not because I'll catch up to them, but because I will learn things here that you cannot learn anywhere else. William looked at him for a long moment. That is exactly the right answer, he said. Not because it's confident, because it's honest about both sides. I learned from fixing motorcycles, Alex said. Honest assessment is how you diagnose. You don't fix what you think is wrong. You fix what's actually wrong. Thomas, who had apparently been within earshot, made a sound from his stool in the corner. It was a short sound, not quite a laugh, not quite agreement, something between the two. The sound a man makes when something lands correctly. And then Denny, who had been largely quiet all morning, put down his brush and turned around. "You want to see something?" he said to Alex. Alex looked at him. Denny walked to the far end of the shop, past Sal and Garrett, and their frame to a corner that was covered with a canvas drop cloth. He took hold of one corner of the cloth and looked back at Alex. "William had us finish this last night," Denny said, after his phone call. He pulled the cloth. What was under it made Alex go still. It was a motorcycle, not a current project, not a work in progress. It was finished, complete, every surface attended to. The frame was custom. The tank was a shape Alex had never seen produced commercially. The paint was deep black with a single line of dark red running the length of the tank that caught the light in a way that paint only did when it had been done by someone who understood light. It was without qualification one of the most beautiful machines Alex had ever seen. "What is this?" Alex asked. "That," William said from behind him. Alex hadn't heard him cross the shop, "is what Thomas built for me 35 years ago." A pause. "It's been through a lot. Denny restored it last year. I've been thinking about what to do with it since." Alex looked at the motorcycle. He looked at William. "I'm not giving it to you," William said, and there was something in his voice, a quality between humor and seriousness that required both to work. "I'm showing you what this shop can do. I'm showing you what's possible. I'm showing you what 35 years of being serious about a craft looks like." Thomas spoke from across the shop. "I built that in a rented garage with 4 tools and no money." His voice was dry, factual. "Everything else is just practice." Alex looked at the motorcycle for a long time. He thought about his notebooks, his calculations, his frame alignment technique that he had worked out alone through trial and error in a service bay on Van Buren, and then found in one specialty manual, and felt that strange private satisfaction. He thought about what Thomas had said, "Everything else is just practice." "I want to show you something," Alex said. He reached into the inside pocket of his jacket. He had not planned this, had not thought this morning of bringing the notebook. He brought it because he always had it, the way a person always has their keys, because the habit of having it had fused with his identity somewhere in the last 3 years until the two were indistinguishable. He held it out to William. William took it. He opened it. He looked at the first page, then turned to the second, the third. He looked at the drawings, the frame designs, the geometry, calculations, the notes in the margins. He turned pages slowly. He did not say anything. Then Marcus appeared at his shoulder, not intrusively, just there, drawn by the quality of silence around the notebook, and looked. Marcus reached out and pointed at something on one of the pages. "This junction," he said to Alex without looking up. "How did you arrive at this angle?" "Load distribution," Alex said. "If you move the junction point back 3 centimeters from the standard position, you change the weight transfer under braking. I calculated it from first principles and then tested it on a friend's frame." Marcus looked at the page. He looked at Alex. He looked at the page again. "It works," he said. "The bike handles better under hard braking than anything I've ridden," Alex said. "My friend put 7,000 miles on it since." Marcus straightened up. He looked at William. He said nothing, which from Marcus Alex would come to understand said everything. William closed the notebook. He held it for a moment. Then he handed it back to Alex. "Monday morning," William said. 7 o'clock. Bring this." Alex took the notebook. He looked around the shop, at Marcus, who had gone back to his drawing with the manner of a man who had made a decision. At Pete, who was watching with that frank, evaluating expression and had begun almost imperceptibly to nod. At Denny, who had put his brush back down and was leaning against the workbench with his arms crossed and a look that was not unfriendly. At Sal and Garrett, who had both at some point stopped working on the frame and were watching. At Thomas on his stool in the corner, who was looking at Alex with those clear, unhurried eyes and who said, without moving and without changing his expression, "Monday." One word. From Thomas, it was a verdict. Alex looked at William. "Monday," Alex said. He walked back to his Civic at 10:30 in the morning. The block was mostly clear now. The riders had dispersed gradually over the morning, heading back to their own days, their own lives, the ordinary machinery of a Phoenix Tuesday. A few were still there talking in small groups, and some of them looked at Alex as he passed, and some of them didn't, and both responses felt correct and appropriate in ways he couldn't entirely explain. He got in the Civic. He sat. He was shaking. Not the internal molecular vibration of aftermath this time. Something different. Something that started from the inside and worked outward, the specific physical response of a body that has been holding itself carefully for a long time and has just been given permission to stop. He pressed both hands flat on the steering wheel. He breathed. He thought, this is real. He thought Monday is 4 days away. He thought, I need to tell Curtis. That last thought arrived with a weight attached to it. Curtis Reeves had given Alex steady work for 2.5 years. Curtis had been decent and fair and flexible in the way that small business owners who hire good people and want to keep them are decent and fair and flexible. Telling Curtis was not a small thing. Alex started the Civic and drove back to Van Buren Street. Curtis was in Bay 1 with a touring bike that needed new brake lines. He looked up when Alex came in. He read something in Alex's face immediately. Curtis was good at that, had spent decades reading the faces of employees and customers and parts suppliers, had developed a reliable instinct for the difference between ordinary news and news that changed something. Tell me, Curtis said. Alex told him. All of it this time. The parking lot, William, the Hells Angels, the shop, Monday. He told it quickly and clearly, the way you tell someone difficult news when you respect them too much to soften it into confusion. Curtis listened. When Alex finished, Curtis was quiet for a moment. He put down his wrench. He took off his glasses and held them in his hand. You're leaving, Curtis said. 2 weeks' notice, Alex said immediately. Longer if you need it. Curtis looked at him. Son, he said he called Alex this occasionally, not out of sentimentality, but out of something real. The honest feeling of a man who had watched a young person do good work for 2 years and felt something adjacent to pride about it. I need you to understand something. Alex waited. I've been watching you fix motorcycles in this shop for 2.5 years, Curtis said. And I have known for most of that time that this shop was not where you belonged. Not because it isn't a good shop, it is. He paused. Because you are too good for it. Not in an arrogant way. In the way that a specific tool is right for a specific job and wrong for another. I have been the wrong job for you. I knew that. He put his glasses back on. I kept hoping something right would come along. Alex looked at him. This is something right, Curtis asked. I think so, Alex said. Curtis nodded. Then go. He picked his wrench back up. 2 weeks is fine. And if it doesn't work out, which it will, but if it somehow doesn't, there's a bay here with your name on it. Alex stood there for a moment. Thank you, Curtis, he said. Finish the Sportster, Curtis said, and the Yamaha. Do it right. I always do, Alex said. I know, Curtis said. He did not look up from the brake line. That's why I said it. Alex went back to Bay 2. He put on his gloves. He picked up his wrench. And he worked the way he always worked, attentively, completely, with the full weight of his attention on the job in front of him, through the rest of the morning and into the afternoon, doing the work correctly, because the work deserved to be done correctly, regardless of what came next, regardless of Monday, regardless of Thomas saying one word in a shop that felt like a cathedral and meaning everything by it. He was finishing the Sportster at 3:40 when his phone rang. He looked at the screen. Unknown number. He almost let it go to voicemail. He was mid-torque on a bolt, and his hands were occupied, and unknown numbers at 3:40 in the afternoon were almost never anything good. Something made him answer. Carter, he said the way William answered, flat 2 syllables, because he'd heard William do it, and it had lodged itself in him without his permission. The voice on the other end was not William. It was younger, and it was not calm. Is this Alex Carter? The voice said. The Alex Carter from the lot on Camelback Road. Alex went still. Who is this? He said. A pause. Then my name is Ryan Vaughn, Derek's younger brother. The wrench in Alex's hand was very heavy suddenly. Okay, Alex said carefully. I need you to listen to me, Ryan Vaughn said. His voice had a quality that Alex was trying to identify, not threatening, not aggressive, but not calm. Something between urgent and afraid. Derek doesn't know I'm calling you. If he knew A pause. Look, I don't care about the parking lot. I don't care about any of that. But Derek does. And he's been talking. About you. About finding you. Alex's jaw tightened. He knows where you work, Ryan said. I don't know how, but he does. And he's been saying, another pause. Look, I'm telling you because what you did in that lot was the right thing. I know it was. Derek's wrong, and he's been wrong for a long time, and I can't do anything about what he is, but I can do this. Alex said, tell me what he's planning. Ryan told him. Alex listened. And when Ryan was done, Alex stood in Bay 2 with the Sportster in front of him, and the wrench in his hand and the afternoon light coming through the shop door, and he understood several things simultaneously. He understood that the parking lot on Camelback Road was not finished. He understood that Derek Vaughn was a man who did not accept conclusions that weren't his own. He understood that he had a decision to make, right now, today. He also understood something else, something that arrived with the particular clarity of a thing that has been true all along and has simply been waiting for the right moment to become visible. He was not alone in this anymore. He looked at the phone in his hand. He looked at the card he no longer needed. He dialed William Harrison's number. It rang once. "Harrison," William answered. "It's Carter," Alex said. "I know," William said. "What's wrong?" And the fact that William knew the fact that something in Alex's two-word delivery was enough to tell him that this was not a routine call made Alex understand for the first time with his full body, rather than just his mind, what it meant to not be standing alone. "Derek Vaughn," Alex said. "His brother just called me. We have a problem." A pause. Short. One breath. "Come to the shop," William said. His voice had not changed in pitch or volume. It had changed in quality. Something beneath it had engaged the way an engine engages when you shift into a gear that was designed for a specific kind of road. "Now," Alex asked. "Now," William said. Alex put down the wrench. He pulled off his gloves. He walked to the front of the shop where Curtis was still working on the touring bike and said, "I need to leave." Curtis looked up. "Family?" he asked. Alex thought about that for a moment. "Something like that," he said. He drove back across Phoenix with both hands on the wheel and his mind very clear and very quiet, the way it got when a problem had been identified and the diagnostic phase was over and it was time to work. He didn't know what was waiting at William's shop. He knew William would be there. He knew Thomas would be there. He knew Marcus and Pete and Denny and Sal and Garrett would be there. He knew without having been told that whatever phone call William had made the previous night, the one that had filled an entire block with motorcycles by 7 in the morning, could be made again. He drove, and behind him in a part of Phoenix he was moving away from Derek Vaughn was having a conversation that he didn't know was already known. Making plans that had already been heard, setting something in motion that had no idea what was waiting for it on the other end. Alex touched the black bandana on his forearm. He pressed the accelerator. He drove toward the people who had said without saying it in words, "We are with you." William was on the phone when Alex walked through the shop door. Not his personal phone, a different one, older, heavier, the kind that existed purely for function rather than anything else. He was speaking quietly, but with that particular quality of voice that cut through ambient noise, without raising itself, the voice of a man who had spent decades being listened to and no longer needed volume to achieve it. Marcus was at his workbench, but not working. His hands were flat on the surface, his eyes on William. Pete was standing near the door to the back room, arms crossed, body language that Alex was learning to read. Alert, contained, waiting for information before committing to movement. Denny had his brush in his hand, but it was dry. Sal and Garrett had come away from the frame and were sitting on workbenches, and the quality of their stillness told Alex that they had been sitting that way for some time. Thomas was on his stool. His eyes went to Alex the moment Alex walked in, and he held them there steady, clear, the gaze of a man taking inventory. Alex crossed the shop to where William stood. William held up one finger, "Wait," and finished his call with 4 words that Alex couldn't hear. Then he lowered the phone and looked at Alex. "Tell me what Ryan said," William said. "Exactly," Alex told him. Word for word, in sequence, the way he reported a diagnostic, no interpretation layered over it. Yet just what was said in the order it was said. He had a good memory for exact language, which came from the same instinct that made him good at tracing electrical faults, the conviction that the specific detail was always the thing that mattered, and that paraphrasing introduced error. William listened without moving. When Alex finished, the shop was very quiet. Then Marcus said, "He knows where the shop is." His brother didn't say the shop specifically, Alex said. He said Derek knows where Alex works, which until Monday is still Van Buren Street. "Van Buren," Pete said. He said it like he was placing it on a map in his mind. "Curtis is there," Alex said. And the thought of Curtis, decent, fair Curtis, with his world's okayest fisherman thermos, and his 2.5 years of steady work landed in Alex's chest with a weight he hadn't anticipated. "We need to call Curtis," Alex said. "Already handled," William said. Alex looked at him. "I called the shop 4 minutes ago," William said. Curtis is closing early today. He'll be out within the hour. Alex stared at him. You called Curtis before I even... When you said Derek Vaughn's name, I knew what the call was, William said simply. I've been doing this longer than you've been alive, Carter. Derek Vaughn is not a complicated man. He does one thing when he's embarrassed. He retaliates. The only question was when and where. And you knew all this, Alex said before I called you. I knew it was possible. Ryan's call made it definite. William's voice was steady, factual, carrying no apology for the information gap. I had hoped Derek would be smart enough to walk away. He isn't. Alex absorbed this. What does he actually want? Alex asked. It can't just be about the parking lot. He lost 6 men against 1. Coming back as that's not about the motorcycle anymore. No, William said. It isn't. He put the phone down on the workbench. He looked around at the men in the shop, at Marcus and Pete, and Denny, at Sal and Garrett, at Thomas on his stool. A look that had the quality of a conversation that didn't need words, built from years of the same people in the same rooms, working through hard things together. Then he looked at Alex. Sit down, he said. I'm going to tell you something I should have told you yesterday. Alex sat on a workbench stool, and William Harrison began to talk. The story he told was not short. It began 15 years ago with a man named Gerald Forsyth, who ran a network of chop shops across Maricopa County and who had for several years operated under an arrangement that gave him a degree of protection he had not earned through any legitimate means. The arrangement ended when William Harrison, then still an active and central figure in the regional Hells Angels chapter, decided that protection of that kind was not something he was willing to provide to Gerald Forsyth for reasons that William stated plainly and without drama. Gerald Forsyth was in the business of stealing motorcycles from private owners, many of them elderly, many of them veterans, and selling them in pieces. William had made his position on this clear. Gerald Forsyth had not appreciated clarity. The fallout was significant and complicated and had moved through several years and several people, and the details were not all Alex's to know yet, but the relevant endpoint was this: Gerald Forsyth was no longer operating in Maricopa County. He had relocated his operations to a state to the east. He had taken with him a specific and personal resentment toward William Harrison that had not diminished with distance. Derek Vaughn, William explained, was Gerald Forsyth's nephew. The parking lot on Camelback Road was not a random robbery. It was a message sent by a man in another state through a nephew willing to carry it, aimed at an older biker alone on a Wednesday afternoon in a place that someone had known he would be. The motorcycle, the rare custom Harley worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, was almost secondary. What Gerald Forsyth wanted was the image, the story, the version of events that could be told in certain rooms in certain cities, that William Harrison Ironwill had been taken down in a back lot by 6 men, that he had been left on the ground, that the age had finally caught up with the myth. Alex sat very still through all of this. When William finished, Alex said, "He tried to destroy your reputation. He tried to end a story," William said, "the story that my name tells, because that story is the only thing standing between Gerald Forsyth and a return to Maricopa County. And I ruined the ending he planned," Alex said. "You didn't just ruin it," William said. "You rewrote it. The story that came out of that parking lot is not the one Gerald Forsyth commissioned. It is the opposite of it." He paused. "Which is why Derek Vaughn cannot let it stand. Because if he lets it stand, his uncle's message not only failed, it backfired. A 24-year-old mechanic with no affiliation and no backup stopped 6 men and walked away. That's the story that's moving now. And for Gerald Forsyth, that story is more dangerous than silence." The shop was very quiet. Thomas spoke from his corner. "How long have you known about Forsyth's involvement?" he said to William. "I suspected from the beginning," William said. "Derek doesn't plan. Someone planned the location, the timing, the isolation." "That's not Derek." Thomas nodded slowly, the nod of a man confirming something he already knew. "So what now?" Alex asked. "Now," William said, "we make sure Derek Vaughn understands the full scope of what he walked into." "By doing what?" William looked at him. "By doing nothing violent," he said with a precision that told Alex this was not a small point. "We are not going to meet Derek Vaughn on the terms he understands. We are going to meet him on terms he doesn't." "Which are?" Alex asked. "Visibility," William said. "Numbers. And the truth about what happened on Camelback Road told publicly, loudly, and in every direction." Marcus said from his workbench, "The rally." William looked at him. Barker's Crossing, Marcus said. It's Saturday, 2,000 riders. Regional, if we're going to make the story. I know, William said. Then Saturday, Marcus said. And his voice had the same quality Thomas's had when he said Monday, a single word doing the work of a paragraph. Alex looked between them. What's Barker's Crossing? Annual rally, Pete said from the door of the back room. Biggest regional gathering in the Southwest. Riders from 5 states. Media sometimes, always a crowd. William speaks every year, Denny added. It was the most Denny had said since Alex arrived, and the simplicity of it, the plain factual statement delivered without inflection, carried more weight than elaboration would have. Alex looked at William. William was looking at him with that expression, the open door, the light through the edge. I want you there, William said, at the rally. Yes. To do what? To stand there, William said. That's all. Just stand there and let me tell the truth about what happened. Alex was quiet for a moment. He thought about Curtis closing up the shop early, moving quickly through a side door because a phone call told him to. He thought about Ryan Vaughn, Derek's younger brother, calling an unknown number at 3:40 in the afternoon because something in him could not let the wrong thing move forward unchallenged. He thought about Gerald Forsyth in another state, waiting for a story that had already been replaced by a different one. I thought about the 8 seconds on Camelback Road. Okay, he said. The next 2 days moved differently than any days Alex Carter had lived before. I went back to Van Buren Street on Thursday morning and finished what he owed Curtis, the Yamaha, the Sportster, 2 smaller jobs that had come in Tuesday and Wednesday, everything completed with the full weight of his attention because that was the only way he knew how to do work. Curtis moved through those 2 days with a particular manner, careful, slightly formal, the way people move when they are managing feelings they have decided are not appropriate to the current situation. On Thursday afternoon, when the Yamaha's owner came to collect, and Alex watched the man ride away on a motorcycle that ran better than it had in 3 years, Curtis stood beside him for a moment. You did good work here, Curtis said. You gave me a place to do it, Alex said. Curtis made the sound of a man deciding not to say several things. Saturday, he said instead. Barker's Crossing. I'll be there. Alex looked at him. Yeah, man. I have a 94 Softail in my garage that I have been meaning to get back on for 6 years, Curtis said. I believe Saturday qualifies as sufficiently motivating. Alex didn't know what to say to that. He said, I'll see you there. He stopped at the house on Thursday evening to sit with his father. Richard had been quiet since their conversation at the kitchen table, not withdrawn, not worried but thoughtful in the particular way of a man who was processing something he understood the weight of and was giving it the space it deserved. He had a habit when something important was sitting with him of going quiet and cleaning things, the kitchen, the small back porch, the old shovel head in the garage that he still couldn't ride, but that Alex kept running. Richard had apparently cleaned everything within reach over the past 2 days because when Alex walked in Thursday evening, the house had the particular quality of somewhere that had been moved through by someone paying close attention. Alex sat down at the kitchen table. Richard sat across from him. Tell me where we are, Richard said. Alex told him. Derek Vaughn, Gerald Forsyth, the Rally Williams plan. He told it in the same way, clearly in sequence, without softening. He had learned this from his father, who had always met information directly, who believed that softening facts was a form of disrespect for the person you were softening them for. Richard listened. When Alex finished, Richard said, This man Forsyth. Yeah. He's not coming here, Richard said. It was not a question exactly. It was a man who had been a construction worker for 30 years doing a structural assessment and stating his conclusion. No, Alex said. He's not coming himself. He sends people. Like Derek. Like Derek. Richard looked at the table for a moment. And William Harrison's plan is to make the story so large and so public that Forsyth can't manage it anymore. That's what I understand, Alex said. Richard looked at him. What do you think? Alex considered it honestly. I think it's right, he said. Not just strategically. I think it's the correct response. Derek Vaughn came after someone to silence a story. The answer to that isn't to go after Derek Vaughn. The answer is to make sure the story can't be silenced. Richard looked at him for a long time. Your grandfather, he said finally, would have said that. Alex looked at him. He had a phrase, Richard said. I haven't thought about it in years. He paused, pulling it up from wherever things went when they waited. He said, the truth is not fragile. Men just treat it like it is. The kitchen was quiet. Alex picked up his coffee mug and held it. "I'm going to be fine, Dad," he said. "I know," Richard said. "That's not why I'm thinking about your grandfather." He looked at Alex across the table. "I'm thinking about him because he was the kind of man who did what was right and then watched it matter. That's a rare thing to see in a lifetime. I think you're going to see it Saturday." They sat together for another hour. They didn't talk about Derek Vaughan or Gerald Forsyth or the rally. They talked about other things: the shovelhead, a story Richard had about a construction job in Flagstaff in 1987 that Alex had heard twice before and didn't mind hearing again, the particular quality of the Phoenix evening coming through the kitchen window. Ordinary things, the kind that only feel ordinary from the inside. When Alex left, Richard walked him to the door. He put his hand on Alex's shoulder, the injured one, but carefully the hand of a man who knew where the hurt was. "Monday morning," Richard said. "New shop, new work." "Yeah," Alex said. "Don't be late." "I won't." Richard squeezed once gently and went back inside. Saturday arrived the way important things do, both faster than expected and with the gravity of something that has been approaching for a long time. Barker's Crossing was a stretch of highway outside Scottsdale that became once a year the center of the regional motorcycle world. Alex had heard of it. Everyone in the motorcycle community in Arizona had heard of it, but had never been. He arrived with William at 9 in the morning, 2 hours before the main event began, and what he found was already overwhelming in scale. Thousands of motorcycles. Not dozens, not hundreds. Thousands spread across a temporary gathering space that had been organized with the practiced efficiency of people who had done this many times: vendors and stages, and the particular democratic energy of a gathering, where the only credential that mattered was showing up on two wheels and being willing to be among people who cared about the same things. Alex walked alongside William and said very little because there was too much to take in for conversation to fit. People recognized William constantly. Not in the way celebrities are recognized: the sudden double take, the tentative approach, the request for a photograph. In the way that respected figures in tight communities are recognized: a nod, a word, a hand extended and shaken with the brief pressure of genuine regard. William received each one the same way, directly, without performance, with the same quality of attention he gave Alex on the curb outside Curtis's shop. But something else was happening too. People were looking at Alex. He noticed it gradually, a look that lasted a beat too long, a group of riders who went quiet as he and William passed, and then began talking again after they were through. A woman who caught his eye and nodded once, not the casual acknowledgement of a stranger, but something more specific, more intentional. A man who reached out and touched Alex's arm briefly as he passed, said nothing, moved on. "They know," Alex said to William quietly. "Yes," William said. "How?" "The same way the block was full by 7 in the morning on Tuesday," William said. "This community communicates." "About me," William looked at him sideways. "About what you did, which is about you but is also larger than you. That's something you'll have to get used to." Alex thought about that. He wasn't sure he knew how to get used to it. The idea that his 8 seconds in a parking lot had moved through thousands of people, like a current had arrived here at Barker's Crossing before he did, was large enough to be disorienting if he looked at it directly. He looked at his boots instead. Marcus appeared from somewhere to his left, which Alex had not expected. Then Pete from the right, then Denny, and then Sal and Garrett moving through the crowd toward them with the particular purposefulness of people who had a specific place to be. Thomas was already at the stage. Of course Thomas was already at the stage. The stage was simple, elevated, practical, a sound system, a microphone that worked. William went to it at 11 o'clock, and the crowd came together in the organic, unhurried way of a crowd that knows what it wants to see and has been waiting comfortably. Alex stood to the right of the stage with Marcus beside him. He crossed his arms. He watched. William took the microphone. He did not begin with the rally. He did not begin with pleasantries or acknowledgments or the formal opening language of someone running through an expected sequence. He began the way he did everything, directly at the thing itself. 3 days ago, William said, "I was on the ground in a parking lot off Camelback Road. 3 cracked ribs, blood in my eye, 6 men standing over me. I want to be honest with you, I did not know if I was going to stand up from that." The crowd was immediately completely still. "A young man came around a corner," William said. "He didn't know me. He didn't know my name. He had no reason to be there and every reason to walk away. He saw 6 against 1, and he made a decision in the time it takes to breathe twice. He paused. I want him to come up here. Alex had known this was coming. William had told him. He had agreed, and now standing at the right side of the stage with thousands of people and their attention arranging itself in his direction, he understood that knowing something was coming and experiencing it arriving were two entirely separate things. Marcus put a hand briefly on his shoulder, not pushing, just present. Alex walked up to the stage. He stood beside William at the microphone and looked out at the crowd, at the thousands of faces, the motorcycles behind them in their dense rows, the Arizona sky overhead, doing what it always did, pressing down with its clean, indifferent heat, and he did not feel what he had expected to feel. He had expected to feel exposed, small, out of place. He felt located. That word again. The specific, irreducible sense of being in the correct place at the correct time for the correct reasons. His name is Alex Carter, William said. He is a mechanic. He is 24 years old. He had nothing to gain from what he did, and he did it anyway. He looked at Alex beside him. I have one question for him that I did not ask him in that parking lot. Alex looked at him. Why, William said, simply, directly, the same question he had asked in the lot, but now with thousands of witnesses, now with the weight of a public moment behind it. And Alex took the microphone. He held it for a moment. He looked out at the crowd. He thought about his father's words. He thought about his grandfather's phrase filtered through 30 years of Richard Carter's memory. He thought about Thomas on his stool and Marcus's hands on a workbench and the card with one phone number on a kitchen table and $11 in a checking account in the 8 seconds on Camelback Road. He said, because someone had to. 4 words. The crowd was silent for a full second. Then it wasn't. The sound that came back at Alex Carter was not applause exactly, or it was, but it was more than applause. It had more texture and more weight, and it moved through his body differently. It hit him in the chest and in the throat and in the specific place behind the eyes where things land when they are real. He handed the microphone back to William. He walked back to Marcus. Marcus put his hand on his shoulder again. This time it stayed, and that was when Alex saw it. On the edge of the crowd, standing apart slightly back in the gap between 2 rows of parked bikes, a man was watching, not watching the stage, watching Alex specifically. A large man, mid-40s, face Alex didn't recognize, with a phone raised and pointed. Not at the stage. At Alex. Alex's stomach went cold. He leaned to Marcus. The man at 11 o'clock by the 2 touring bikes. Marcus looked. His expression didn't change. I see him, Marcus said quietly. He's filming me specifically. Yes. He's not a rally regular. No, Marcus said. He's not. Alex looked at Marcus. Forsyth. Forsyth someone, Marcus said. He pulled out his phone and sent a text with 3 words. Alex didn't see them. He didn't need to. Within 90 seconds, Pete was on the man's left. Garrett was on his right. They hadn't come from the same direction, hadn't appeared to coordinate, had simply arrived the way things arrive when an organization is functioning correctly. The man with the phone looked left, looked right, lowered the phone. He walked away through the crowd with the careful, measured pace of someone trying not to look like they were leaving quickly. He was not moving quickly. He was moving at exactly the speed that someone moves when they understand that moving faster would make things worse. He was gone from the grounds within 4 minutes. Alex watched him go. What just happened? He said. Forsyth sent someone to document you, Marcus said, to identify you, to know your face clearly enough for whatever comes next. And now that person is going back to Forsyth empty-handed, Marcus said, which is its own message. Alex thought about this. He's going to keep coming, Alex said. It wasn't a question. It was a structural observation, the same kind he made about mechanical problems. If the root cause isn't addressed, the symptom returns. Yes, Marcus said. So this isn't finished? No, Marcus said. He looked at Alex with the direct, unhurried gaze that Alex was beginning to recognize as the characteristic quality of men who had been through things and come out on the other side with their clarity intact. But here is what is different now. He gestured slightly at the crowd around them, at the thousands of people who had heard 4 words spoken into a microphone and responded the way they had. At Pete and Garrett moving casually back through the crowd. At William on the stage continuing to speak, his voice carrying across the grounds. At Curtis, who Alex spotted now halfway back in the crowd on a 94 Softail, that looked like it had been cleaned for the first time in 6 years, watching the stage with an expression that Alex couldn't read from this distance, but that had the right shape. "This is different," Marcus said. Before Saturday, Forsyth's play was to control the narrative, to make William look weak, to make the parking lot story disappear under a different story. He paused. "There are 2,000 people here today. By Monday, there will be 20,000 people who know your name and what you did. You cannot unring that bell." Alex looked at him. "Gerald Forsyth sent 6 men to deliver a message," Marcus said. "What he got back was this." He let the crowd speak for itself. The rally continued for 3 more hours. Alex moved through it in a state that he would later describe inaccurately as calm. It was not calm, it was a state beyond calm, a kind of settled presence that came from having been asked a question publicly and having answered it honestly, and having found that the answer was apparently enough. More than enough. The right shape of a thing placed in the right moment. People approached him throughout the afternoon. Not in a rush, in the considerate individual way of people who understood that a crowd was made of separate human beings and that each encounter deserved its own space. A veteran from Tucson who shook his hand and said nothing except, "Good." A woman who had been writing for 30 years and told him with the particular authority of someone who did not waste words on things they didn't mean, that she had seen a lot of young men come through this community and that she knew the difference between someone performing courage and someone who simply had it. A teenager, 16, maybe 17, who came with his father, who looked at Alex with the specific attention of someone who was filing something away carefully for future use. Alex shook every hand. He answered every question honestly. He was present for each of it completely because these people were giving him something real, and real things deserve real attention. At 4:15, William found him near the stage. "There's something you need to know," William said. Alex looked at him. "Ryan Vaughn called me this morning," William said, "before the rally." Alex hadn't known William was in contact with Ryan. "He told me something that Derek hasn't acted on yet, but will," William said. "Derek has been in contact with Forsyth directly. Not just delivering messages, making a deal for what Derek wants from Forsyth in exchange for finishing what the parking lot started." Alex felt the cold again. "What does Derek want?" he said. "The shop," William said. Alex stared at him. "Not this shop, the shop you're opening, the one in the notebooks. Forsyth knows about the apprenticeship. He has someone close enough to Derek to have heard about it. His offer to Derek is capital, startup money enough to establish the kind of operation Derek could never build himself in exchange for making sure your shop never opens." He paused. "And in exchange for one other thing." The afternoon heat pressed down. "What other thing?" Alex said. William looked at him steadily. "For making sure," William said, "that the story of what happened on Camelback Road ends with a different outcome." Alex said nothing for a moment. The crowd moved around them. The engines ran. The afternoon continued being the afternoon. "He wants to come back," Alex said. "Yes." "For me." "Yes." Alex looked at the ground. He breathed once, carefully managing it. "When?" he said. "Ryan thinks Monday," William said. "He thinks Derek wants to move before you start at the shop, before you're inside something he can't reach into." Monday. The word had meant something beautiful 48 hours ago. Thomas saying it on his stool. One word of verdict. Now it had a different edge. "Does Derek know about today?" Alex said. "About what happened here, what you said?" "He knows," William said. "Ryan told me Derek watched it live streamed." "And it made it worse," Alex said. "Yes." Alex looked at William. "I'm not going to hide," he said. It was not a decision he was making in the moment. It was an acknowledgement of a decision that had already been made, that had been made on a cracked asphalt lot on a Wednesday afternoon when he had 2 seconds, maybe 3, and chose to walk forward. "I know," William said, "and I'm not going to miss Monday." "I know that too. So what do we do between now and Monday morning?" William looked at him for a moment with that expression, the open door, the light at the edge, and said something that Alex did not expect. "Nothing," William said. Alex waited. "We do nothing," William said. "We let Derek Vaughn come to the conclusion that's been inevitable since the moment he turned away from that parking lot. We let him make his plan. We let him believe he has an element of surprise." He paused. "And we make sure that when Monday morning arrives, everything Derek Vaughn doesn't know about what he's walking into is waiting for him." Alex looked at him. How many people know about Monday? Alex asked. William held his gaze. How many people? William said. We're at Barker's Crossing today. The answer moved through Alex like current through a wire. He looked out over the grounds, the motorcycles, the riders, the thousands of people who had heard 4 words and responded with everything they had. He thought about a phone call that filled a block by 7 in the morning. He thought about how fast a story traveled when the people carrying it believed in it. I thought about Derek Vaughan watching a live stream alone somewhere, watching the crowd respond and making a plan that was already too small for the situation he was actually in. He thought about Monday. He touched the black bandana on his arm. Okay, he said. He said it the same way he said it to William on the curb outside the shop when William asked him if he was ready to see the workspace, and the world had just shifted under his feet, and he needed one syllable to stand on while he found his footing. One word, doing the work of everything. Okay, Alex Carter said, and he meant it. Sunday passed quietly. That was the thing about it that Alex remembered most clearly afterward. Not the anxiety, not the waiting, not the weight of knowing what Monday might bring. What he remembered was the quiet. The Sunday morning with his father at the kitchen table coffee, going the sound of Phoenix waking up outside Richard, reading a newspaper, the way he always had physical paper folded in thirds, holding it at arm's length, the way he'd needed to since his eyes changed. The ordinary machinery of a life that had been ordinary for a long time and was about to stop being that. Alex sat across from him and did not talk about Derek Vaughan. He talked about the shop, about Marcus and the frame geometry conversation that had moved from 5 minutes to 45 without either of them noticing. About Thomas on his stool saying one word at a time and meaning paragraphs. About the motorcycle under the drop cloth, the one Thomas had built 35 years ago, the one that had made Alex go completely still the moment Denny pulled the canvas back because it was the most honest machine he had ever seen. Richard listened the way he always listened to Alex talking about motorcycles, not the polite listening of a man indulging a subject he didn't share, but genuine listening, the kind that came from watching someone he loved be fully alive in a conversation. You're ready? Richard said when Alex finished. For Monday, Alex said. For all of it, Richard said. Alex looked at his coffee mug. I keep thinking about Derek, he said. Not because I'm scared of him. I want to be clear about it. I keep thinking about him because I don't understand what he thinks he's accomplishing. Even if he comes Monday and it goes the way he thinks, what does he win? The story is already out. 2,000 people heard William speak at Barker's Crossing. It's been shared and reshared, and it's in places that neither Derek Vaughan nor Gerald Forsyth can reach. Richard put down his newspaper. Some men, he said, aren't trying to win anything anymore. They're just trying to make sure nobody else does either. Alex looked at him. That's its own kind of losing, Richard said. It just takes longer to finish. They sat together through the morning. After lunch, Alex went to the garage and spent 2 hours with the shovelhead. Not because it needed work, but because he needed the specific peace that came from having his hands on something he understood completely, something that told him the truth. He checked the timing. He adjusted the idle. He listened to the engine run and heard in it the 30-year conversation between his father and this machine and himself, all three of them woven together in something that looked like a motorcycle but was actually a record of love expressed through maintenance. He closed the garage at 4. He went inside. He called William. Tomorrow, Alex said. Tomorrow, William said. You're sure about doing nothing tonight? I'm sure, William said. Derek needs to believe he has the initiative. The moment he thinks he's lost it, he goes to ground, and we're managing this indefinitely. Let him come to the conclusion. Let him move. And when he moves, everything that's waiting for him will be there, William said. Get some sleep, Carter. Alex almost laughed. Sure, he said. I mean it. Tired men make poor decisions. How are your ribs? Alex asked. He asked it the way he always asked it, practically because he wanted to know, not as a courtesy, a pause. Better than they were. That's not a number. 70%, William said. Enough. Enough for what? Enough for Monday, William said. And in those 3 words was everything Alex needed to know about what William Harrison intended to be doing when Monday morning arrived. He slept, not well, but enough. He was up before his alarm at 5:30 dressed and in the kitchen before 6 coffee on, before Richard appeared at the hallway door, hair uncombed, moving with the careful deliberateness of a man who had learned to give his body time to confirm it was working correctly each morning. Richard looked at him. "You're already dressed," he said. "I told Thomas 7, Alex said. Richard looked at the clock. "It's 6. "I know." Richard made his own coffee and sat down. He looked at his son across the table at the black bandana still on his forearm, at the jacket already on, at the hands wrapped around the mug, with the steadiness that had been there since Camelback Road, since the moment Alex stepped around a fence post, and everything changed. "I want to come," Richard said. Alex looked at him. "Don't argue with me," Richard said. "I've been sitting in this house for 2.5 years, letting you carry things I should have been carrying with you. I'm not sitting here while you walk into something that started because you were already carrying something for someone else. Your heart." "My heart," Richard said, "is fine. My cardiologist said moderate activity. Riding in a car to a motorcycle shop is moderate activity." Alex looked at his father, at the set of his jaw, which was the same jaw Alex had, which had the same quality of decision made and not reversing. "Okay," Alex said. "Good," Richard said. He got up. "I'll be ready in 10 minutes. He was ready in 8. They drove across Phoenix in the early morning before the heat had fully committed to the day, when the city had that clean temporary quality it only had in the first hour of light. Richard sat in the passenger seat and looked out the window at the streets he had lived near for 30 years and said nothing for most of the drive, which was its own form of conversation. 2 blocks from McDowell, Alex heard the engines. Richard heard them at the same moment. He turned his head toward the window. "Is that?" he started. "Yeah," Alex said. They turned the last corner. The block in front of William's shop was full again. Not the organized early morning gathering of Tuesday. This was different. This had the quality of something that had assembled gradually, organically through the night, in the early morning, people arriving from different directions and at different hours, the result of a phone call and a rally and a story that had moved through the community like current. Motorcycles filled the block and the adjacent lot and stretched partway down the side street. Riders were still arriving, headlights coming in from 3 directions, the sound layering and building. Alex pulled the Civics to the curb half a block away. He and Richard sat for a moment and looked. "How many?" Richard said quietly. Alex tried to count by section. He gave up. "More than Barker's Crossing," he said. Richard was quiet for a moment. Then he said in a voice that was doing careful structural work to hold itself together, "This is because of you." "It's because of William," Alex said. "William made a phone call," Richard said. "This is because of you." Alex pressed his thumb and forefinger to the bridge of his nose. He held it there for a second. He breathed. "Let's go," he said. They walked the half block together. Richard keeping pace without difficulty, his cardiologist's moderate activity, apparently not an obstacle to walking with intent, through a Phoenix morning towards something large. Marcus met them before they reached the shop door, appeared from the crowd, the way Marcus always appeared from exactly the direction Alex hadn't been watching. He looked at Richard. He looked at Alex. "Your father," he said. "Yes," Alex said. Marcus looked at Richard for a moment with that mechanic's evaluating gaze. Then he extended his hand. "Marcus Webb," he said. "I build frames." Richard shook it. "Richard Carter. I raised the man who fixed your boss's motorcycle in the dark and walked away without asking what it was worth." Marcus looked at Richard. Something shifted in his face, not much, but real. "Come inside," Marcus said. The shop was full. Not uncomfortably, there was still space to move, the kind of space that exists in a room when everyone in it is deliberate about not wasting it. William was at the back speaking quietly with Thomas, who was on his stool, but sitting differently than usual. Forward, elbows on knees, the posture of a man who was fully engaged rather than observing. Pete was near the door, Denny, Sal, Garrett in their positions. The whole shop organized around a center of gravity that was waiting. William looked up when Alex came in. He looked at Richard. Something crossed his face, recognition of a kind that went past introduction, the recognition of a man who understood immediately what it meant that Richard Carter had gotten in a car and driven here on a Monday morning. He crossed the shop and stood in front of Richard. "Mr. Carter," he said. "William," Richard said. He said it without the iron will, without the deference of someone addressing a legend, with the directness of one father speaking to another man who had done right by his son. "I should have called you," William said. "When I came to the shop on Van Buren, I should have introduced myself to you directly. That was a failure of courtesy on my part." Richard looked at him. "You brought him biscuits from Mays and gave him something worth having," he said. "The courtesy was fine." William nodded slowly. He's going to be okay here, William said. I want you to know that. I know that, Richard said. That's not why I came. Why did you come? Richard looked around the shop. At the men inside it, at the crowd outside visible through the open bay door, the engine still running and arriving. He looked at the black bandana on Alex's arm. He looked at William Harrison. Because my son did something worth witnessing, Richard said, and I wasn't there for it, so I'm here now. The shop was quiet for a moment. Thomas from his stool said, good man. 2 words, Thomas Economy, meaning a paragraph. It was 6:48 in the morning. At 7:02, Pete's phone buzzed. He looked at it. His face changed just slightly, just enough. Pete, William said. Movement on Van Buren, Pete said. 3 vehicles, 2 trucks, 1 car, moving slow. Alex felt the cold again, that specific temperature that wasn't fear, but was adjacent to it, the body's honest assessment of a situation before the mind caught up. How many? William said. Pete was reading from his phone. Someone was sending him updates, someone positioned watching. 8, maybe 10 people, he said. Derek's driving the lead truck. He's going to Curtis's shop, Alex said. Yes, William said. Curtis isn't there, Marcus said. Curtis got your call. Derek doesn't know that yet, William said. He turned to Alex. This is the moment, not what happens next on Van Buren. What happens when Derek realizes there's nothing there and comes looking for where you actually are? He'll find it, Alex said. Someone will tell him or he'll figure it out. It's not a secret. No, William said, it isn't. So we wait, Alex said. We wait, William said. And they waited. The waiting had a quality that Alex would not have predicted. Not tense in the way that waiting for bad news was tense, but alert the way an engine was alert when it was running correctly, and you were listening for the sound that told you the conditions had changed. Everyone in the shop was quiet. The crowd outside was quiet too. The engines had mostly cut off now. The way they had cut off on Tuesday morning, the silence moving along the block in sequence, leaving a stillness that had weight. Richard was sitting on a stool that Marcus had positioned for him without being asked. He was watching Alex, not anxiously with the attention of a man who was being present for something who was filing it away. At 7:31, Pete said, he's coming, all 3 vehicles. Nobody moved. How far? William said. 4 minutes, Pete said. William looked around the shop. He looked at the bay doors, both open, morning light coming through. He looked at Marcus and Pete and Denny and Sal and Garrett. He looked at Thomas. He looked at Alex. Nobody goes outside, William said. Nobody approaches. We let him arrive and we let him see. That's all. Alex nodded. Carter. William looked at him. Whatever he says, whatever he does, you say nothing until I do. Understood. Alex looked at him. Understood, he said. 3 minutes and 40 seconds later, Alex knew because he was counting the way he counted in the parking lot, the way he counted the beats of things that mattered. They heard the trucks. They pulled up outside. The engines cut. Doors open. Alex heard footsteps on pavement, multiple sets, the particular percussion of a group of people moving together with collective intention. Then Derek Vaughn appeared in the bay door. He looked different than he had in the parking lot. He was dressed more carefully, which was its own information, not deliberately, not like someone who had dressed up, but like someone who had thought about what he was walking into and had made decisions accordingly. His face had the particular quality of a man who had been carrying anger for 5 days and had organized it into purpose. He stepped into the shop. He looked at Alex. He did not look at William immediately. He looked at Alex first, and in that sequence was everything you needed to know about what Derek Vaughn had told himself this morning was about. Then he looked at the shop, at the men in it, and then finally at the open bay door through which the crowd outside was partially visible, the rows of motorcycles, the riders, the sheer scale of what had gathered here on a Monday morning. Derek's face changed, not dramatically, not a collapse, a recalibration, the expression of a man whose internal map has just been shown to be significantly wrong about the terrain. He looked back at Alex, then at William. Harrison, he said. Derek, William said. His voice was exactly the same as it had been at 6:48. Steady, unhurried, the voice of a man who had decided on the pace of this before it started and was not going to be moved from it. Derek looked around again, at Marcus, at Pete, through the bay door at the crowd. What is this? Derek said. This, William said, is the answer to a question you asked 5 days ago in a parking lot on Camelback Road. You asked what a story was worth. This is what it's worth. Derek's jaw tightened. You brought a crowd. They brought themselves, William said. I made 2 phone calls. The rest is what happens when people hear about something worth showing up for. Derek looked at Alex. He said. The word carried the weight of 5 days of rehearsal. 5 days of a man alone with his anger, working out what he would say when this moment came. You have no idea what you stepped into? Alex said nothing. He had promised William. He kept his promises. He looked at Derek Vaughn directly and steadily and said nothing, which was his own response, and Derek felt it as such. Your uncle called me, William said. Derek went very still. Gerald called me Saturday night, William said. After Barker's crossing, he's a practical man, your uncle. He understands when a situation has developed past what he can manage from a distance. William paused. He's not sending you any money, Derek. There's no deal. He pulled back Saturday night and he wanted me to know, and he wanted you to find out however you found out. Derek stared at him. The color in his face changed. You're lying, Derek said, but his voice had lost something. The rehearsed quality was gone, replaced by something more raw. Call him, William said simply. He held the stillness of a man who had already held his hand and was watching the other player count their cards. Call him right now. Use my phone if you want. Derek did not reach for his phone. I didn't need to. The answer was in his body, in the way his shoulders dropped a fraction of an inch, in the way his hands, which had come in ready for something, were now not sure what they were for. What did you tell him? Derek said. The truth, William said, that the story from Camelback Road was already everywhere, that 2,000 people heard it at Barker's Crossing, that it's been shared so widely that targeting Alex Carter now doesn't erase a story, it creates a new one. One where the ending is much worse for everyone connected to it. He paused. Gerald understood the math. Derek looked at Alex, and Alex saw it, then saw past the anger and the 5 days of carrying it and the trucks outside and the men he'd brought. Saw the thing underneath all of it, the thing that had been underneath it since the parking lot, since the moment Alex stepped around the fence post and Derek's plan stopped being the plan it was supposed to be. Derek Vaughn was afraid, not of Alex, not of William, afraid of the same thing every person who built their identity on intimidation was ultimately afraid of, the moment when intimidation stopped working, when the machinery of it ran into something it couldn't move, and you were left with the uncomfortable shape of yourself without it. What do you want? Derek said. His voice was quieter now. The performance had gone out of it. I want you to go home, William said, and I want you to understand clearly what I'm about to tell you. Derek waited. Alex Carter is going to open a shop, William said. It is going to be extraordinary because he is extraordinary, and because he is going to have every resource and every connection that I can put behind him. That shop is going to be here in this city for a very long time. It is going to matter to a great many people. He paused. Gerald knows this. Gerald has accepted it. If you come at Alex Carter again in any form, through any means, you will not be delivering a message for your uncle. You will be acting alone, and you will find out very quickly what alone means. The shop was very quiet. Outside, the crowd was very quiet. Derek Vaughn stood in the bay door of William Harrison's shop on a Monday morning with 8 men behind him in 3 vehicles and several hundred people in front of him on motorcycles, and a 24-year-old mechanic looking at him from 10 feet away with an expression of complete settled calm, and he performed the same calculation that he had performed in the parking lot on Camelback Road 5 days ago. He arrived at the same answer. This isn't finished, he said. It was the last thing he had. Alex recognized it for what it was, not a threat, not a real one. The final words of a man who needed to leave a room without appearing to have been defeated in it. It is, William said, flat, final, a door closing. Derek looked at Alex one more time. Alex said nothing. He held the eye contact for 3 seconds, and then he looked away, not submissively, not apologetically. He looked away the way you look away from something you have assessed completely and have no further use for. Or the way you close a diagnostic when the problem is solved. Derek turned and walked out. His men followed. The truck started. They pulled away. The sound of them leaving moved down the block and faded. And then from outside, a single horn, one long note, then another beside it, then the entire street. The same sequence as Tuesday morning, but larger, more voices, more weight, the sound filling the Monday air over the east side of Phoenix, like something that had been waiting to be released and had found finally its moment. It lasted 10 seconds. Then silence. Alex exhaled. He had not known until that moment how much of the breath he had been holding since Saturday afternoon, since William told him what Derek was planning, since the cold settled in his chest and had been sitting there through Sunday's quiet and Sunday night's insufficient sleep and Monday morning's drive across the city. He exhaled and felt the cold leave. Marcus put his hand on Alex's shoulder. It stayed. Thomas from his stool looked at Alex across the shop. Monday, Thomas said. The same word he had said 4 days ago. The same voice, but entirely different in meaning. Not a verdict now, not a beginning, a completion, the closing of a circle. Alex looked at Thomas. He nodded once. Richard Carter, sitting on the stool that Marcus had provided, made a sound that was not quite speech and not quite anything else. Alex turned and looked at his father. Richard had both hands flat on his knees and his head down and his shoulders doing the controlled, deliberate movement of a man who was managing something he had not prepared himself to need to manage. Alex crossed the shop and crouched in front of his father. Richard looked up. His eyes were doing what Alex's eyes had done at Barker's Crossing, the thing he would have preferred they didn't do in public in front of people. Dad, Alex said quietly. I'm fine, Richard said. His voice had the particular rough quality of controlled emotion. I know, Alex said. Richard stopped. He pressed his hand briefly over his chest, not the gesture of a man in pain, the gesture of a man indicating where something was sitting. I have been watching you carry things for 2 years, and I kept thinking, when does it turn? When does it come back to him? When does he get something back for all of it? He stopped again. He looked at his son. Now I know. Alex looked at his father. He put his hand over Richard's hand on his father's chest. They stayed like that for a moment, the two of them in the middle of William Harrison's shop on a Monday morning. While around them, the men who built extraordinary machines went quietly back to their work, giving them the space that the moment deserved. Then William appeared beside them. He looked at Richard. Mr. Carter, he said, there's something I'd like to show you. He led them to the far end of the shop, to the corner where the drop cloth was. He looked at Alex. He nodded. Alex took hold of his canvas and pulled it back. The motorcycle was there. Thomas's motorcycle, the one built 35 years ago in a rented garage with 4 tools and no money. The most honest machine Alex had ever seen. The paint catching the light, the tank that no factory had ever produced. The 60-year-old builder's vision, made permanent in metal and craft and time. Richard looked at it. He looked at it the way Alex had looked at it completely, the way you looked at something that demanded complete attention. Thomas built that, William said. In 1991, he was 44 years old and he had been building bikes for 20 years, and he said, this was the first one where he felt like he had finally said exactly what he meant. He paused. I have been carrying it for 35 years because I didn't know where it belonged. Richard looked at William. I think I do now, William said. He looked at Alex. Alex looked at the motorcycle. He looked at William. What are you saying? I'm saying, William said, that when your shop opens, and it will open, it's not a question of if anymore, it's a question of when this goes in it. Not as a display piece, not behind glass. He paused. As the first thing people see when they walk through the door, as the thing that tells them what kind of shop they're in. Alex looked at the motorcycle for a long time. He thought about the notebooks, the calculations, the frame alignment technique, the 12 months of apprenticeship that started today, that started now in this shop on McDowell Road with these men who knew things he didn't know yet and were willing to teach them. He thought about a parking lot on Camelback Road in 8 seconds and the weight of 2 seconds of hesitation and the choice that came after it. I thought about the black bandana on his arm, tied there by a man with cracked ribs who had looked up from the ground at a stranger walking toward impossible odds and had wrapped his own bandana around that stranger's wound because the stranger was bleeding and hadn't known it. I can't take this, Alex said. Thomas spoke from behind them. Alex hadn't heard him cross the shop. You're not taking it, Thomas said. I'm giving it. He came and stood beside William, and the two of them, the 35-year friendship, the 40-year craft. The thing between them that was deeper than either of those measurements looked at Alex together. There's a difference. A man who takes something has received an object. A man who has given something has been trusted with a meaning. He looked at the motorcycle. I built that to say something. It deserves a room where people can hear it. Alex looked at the motorcycle. He looked at Thomas. He looked at William. He looked at his father standing beside him, one hand still at his chest. Okay, Alex said. He sat it a third time, and each time it had been the right word for the moment on the curb outside Curtis's shop, when the ground shifted under him at Barker's Crossing, when the impossible size of what was happening required a single syllable to stand on, and now in a room full of men who built things that told the truth, accepting something that deserved to be accepted. Okay, Alex Carter said, and this time it meant I understand. I will carry this correctly. I will build something worthy of being trusted with it. The work began that morning. Not metaphorically, literally. At 8:15, after Derek Vaughn's trucks had been gone for 40 minutes and the crowd outside had dispersed with the same organic organization it had assembled, with William pointed Alex toward Marcus and Marcus pointed Alex toward a frame in progress and said without preamble, "Tell me what you see." Alex looked at the frame for 20 seconds. Then he told Marcus what he saw. Marcus listened. He asked 3 questions. Alex answered them. Marcus made a sound, the same sound Thomas made at Barker's Crossing when something landed correctly, and handed Alex a measuring tool. They worked. Alex worked beside Marcus through the morning, and the work was harder than anything he had done at Curtis's shop, and more demanding and more precisely calibrated, and he loved every second of it with a completeness that was almost physical, that lived in his hands and his attention, in the specific happiness of a person doing the work they were built for in the company of people who understood why it mattered. Richard sat in the shop's small office for 2 hours talking with Thomas, and Alex didn't know what they talked about. He would ask later, and Richard would give him the answer that Thomas might have given, things worth saying. He stayed until 11, and then Marcus drove him home in a truck that turned out to belong to Garrett, because Richard's idea of moderate activity had bumped gently against its ceiling, and everyone in the shop had noticed before Richard acknowledged it. Before Richard left, he stood in the shop doorway and looked at his son at the workbench beside Marcus, and he looked at the motorcycle under the corner light, and he looked at William Harrison standing at the far end of the shop with Thomas. Thomas, at both of them, watching Alex work with the particular attention of men who had been looking for something for a long time and had finally stopped looking because it had arrived. Richard looked at all of it. He did not say anything. He didn't need to. 12 months passed. They passed in the way that months pass when they are full, not quickly in the sense of being empty, but quickly in the sense of being so completely occupied that the distance between their beginning and end was only apparent when you turned around and looked. Alex worked in William's shop 6 days a week. He learned things from Marcus that he had not known he didn't know, which was the best kind of learning, the kind that expanded the map rather than filling in details on existing territory. He learned things from Pete about electrical systems that rewired not just his technical knowledge, but his understanding of how everything in a machine was connected to everything else. He learned from Denny about finish work, about the relationship between surface and light, about the way a paint job was not decoration, but communication. He learned from Thomas. Thomas taught differently from the others, not through instruction exactly, but through proximity, through being in the same room with a problem and saying nothing until Alex had gone as far as he could go alone, and then saying one sentence that opened the next 30 feet of the path. Alex came to understand that this was the rarest kind of teaching, the kind that required the teacher to trust the student enough to let them be wrong for a while, and required the student to trust the teacher enough to not need reassurance before the sentence came. He learned more from William than from anyone. Not about motorcycles, about something larger and harder to name, about what it meant to be a person who carried a reputation not as a possession, but as a responsibility, about the weight of being known, about the difference between a story people told about you and a story you actually lived, about how those two things could be the same if you were careful, if you were honest, if you held yourself to the standard that your best moments implied. And about debt, the good kind, the kind that moved between people, not as obligation, but as continuation. The way Thomas's 35-year-old motorcycle was not a gift, but a passage, a meaning handed forward to the next person capable of carrying it. Richard's health stabilized, better than stabilized, improved in the way that things sometimes improved when a person had something to look forward to, when the daily texture of life had new content in it. He came to the shop on Saturdays. He and Thomas developed a friendship that Alex observed from across the room and did not fully understand and did not need to recognizing it as one of those connections that formed between people who had arrived at similar understandings through entirely different roads. Curtis sold the Van Buren shop at the end of the year, which he had been planning for 2 years and had told no one characteristically. He called Alex the day the sale closed. "I want you to know something," Curtis said. You were the best mechanic I ever employed, and I knew from the first month that you were going to leave. I just didn't know for what." A pause. "Now I know, and I'm glad it was worth the wait." "It was," Alex said. "I'll bring my soft tail in when you open," Curtis said. "Don't charge me too much." "I'll charge you what it's worth," Alex said. "That's exactly what I'm worried about," Curtis said, and Alex could hear him smiling. Ryan Vaughn called once 3 months after Monday morning. He was brief and direct and did not ask for anything. He said, "I heard the shop is going well." Alex said, "It is." Ryan said, "Good." And that was all. It was enough. Some conversations are complete in 3 exchanges, and those were 3 honest ones. Derek Vaughn, as far as Alex knew, moved away from Phoenix by the end of the year. Gerald Forsyth did not return to Maricopa County. The story that had been supposed to end on Camelback Road, the one that was supposed to silence William Harrison, reduce him, remove the myth from the man, did not end there. It grew. It moved. It became over time exactly what it had been from the first moment, a true account of a thing that actually happened. The shop opened 14 months after Monday morning. It was not large. It was not flashy. It occupied a converted warehouse space off Central Avenue that had good bones and needed work, which was fine because the people opening it were good at work. The name was simple, Carter Custom, which William had suggested, and Alex had accepted, not because it was William's suggestion, but because it was right. Simple, direct, saying exactly what it meant. The grand opening was not a ceremony. It was a Tuesday morning when Alex unlocked the bay door, turned on the lights, and found Marcus already there with coffee, and Pete behind him, and Denny, and Sal, and Garrett, and William and Thomas, who had somehow arrived first and was already on his stool in the corner of the new space, as if the stool had always been there, and the shop had been built around it. Richard was there. He was standing in front of the motorcycle. Thomas's motorcycle positioned exactly where it belonged, the first thing you saw when you walked through the door, under a light that Denny had spent 2 days positioning correctly so that the paint moved, the way Denny knew paint moved when you understood the relationship between surface and light and were willing to take the time to get it right. Richard stood in front of it with his hands at his sides. Alex came and stood beside him. "It's something," Richard said. "Yeah," Alex said. "Your grandfather would have had words for this," Richard said. "Good ones. He was better at that than I am." "You're plenty good," Alex said. They stood in front of the motorcycle together, father and son, in the first hour of the first morning of Carter Custom, while behind them the men who had made this possible moved through the new space with the efficiency of people who knew how to inhabit a workshop. And the Phoenix morning pressed through the open bay door with its intention and its heat and its complete indifference to the significance of the occasion. On the wall behind the motorcycle, Alex had put 2 things. The first was the black bandana. William's bandana tied around his arm in a cracked asphalt lot on a Wednesday afternoon when he hadn't known he was bleeding, framed now simply in plain wood, the thread still showing the knot William had tied. The second was 3 words in plain lettering, black on white, "We don't forget." Not as a slogan, not as decoration. As a statement of fact about the kind of shop. This was the kind of people who built it, the kind of work that would be done inside it. William read the words from across the room. He looked at Alex. He nodded once. And Thomas, on his stool in the corner of the new shop, looked at the bandana and the words and the motorcycle and the man who had walked into a parking lot and made a decision in 8 seconds that rippled outward through months and people and phone calls and rallies and Monday mornings and 12 months of honest work and 14 months of building toward something specific and real. Thomas looked at all of it and he said one word. "Not Monday this time, not good." He said, "Right. Only one word. Doing the work of everything." Because the truth was exactly what it had always been from the moment Alex Carter stepped around a fence post on Camelback Road and walked towards 6 men and 1 person on the ground who had asked a question that the world had not answered. Heroes were not created in dramatic moments. They were created in the ordinary ones, the moment before the dramatic one, when nobody was watching and the choice was private and the outcome was uncertain. And you did it anyway, not because you knew what it would cost or what it would return, but because someone needed help and you were the person standing there, and walking away was the one thing you simply could not do. Alex Carter walked away from nothing. He walked forward. And everything that followed, every hand, shaken, every horn sounded every Monday morning, Every frame built, an engine turned, an honest conversation held, in a shop that smelled of oil and metal, in the specific atmosphere of accumulated intention. Tension, everything that followed was just the world keeping its accounting. 8 seconds. That was all it took. 8 seconds to become the man he had